Welcome to the Town Council meeting for March 17th, 2015. I know that none of you want to be out for St. Patrick's Day, that you're just dying to be here, so welcome and happy St. Patrick's Day. We are going to start the meeting as we normally do with our roll call.
Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Mariko Sayak.
Here.
Councilmember Steve Leonardis.
Here.
Councilmember Rob Rennie.
Here.
Vice Mayor Barbara Spector.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Marcia Jensen.
Here. And now is the time when we invite a young person from our community to come up and join me here at the podium. Megan Lacrone. Hello, welcome. Megan is a senior at Los Gatos High School. Thank you for joining us, where she is very much involved with creative writing, and she's very much involved with the theater. Not only has she appeared in a show, but more importantly, she supports the technical side of the theater. Sound, house management, ushering, all those things that make a show work and are very important that we forget when we're watching something, a production like that. Megan plans to go to De Anza Community College 2 years and then go on to a 4-year college. So Megan, welcome. And you're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'll do that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And thank you, Megan. Let's have a hand for her as you sit down. Megan, thanks again. And we're now going to do a presentation. So I am particularly pleased to have a proclamation tonight honoring Live Oak Senior Nutrition. Many of you may be familiar with that organization, which has served Los Gatos so well for so many years, providing food, socialization, transportation, and other vital services to the seniors in our community. And though she's not coming up, Eliana Brown is here somewhere. Thank you, Eliana. But there is someone special that I'd like to invite up to receive the proclamation. Eric Carlson in Mayo is going to come up. Our former mayor, Eric Carlson, thank you for being here.
Wow. Mayor Jensen, members of the council, I am Eric Carlson. I'm the vice president of the board of the Nutrition Center, where I've been on the board probably since the beginning, I guess. They say I'm the oldest member, which means the longest serving, not the oldest person. First of all, thank you very much for this proclamation. It means a lot to us at the Nutrition Center. I'm joined by Eliana, who you recognize, Mayo Parfait, who is our creative person, and John Wenzel, who's been helping us with fundraising. Anyway, we're grateful to this council, to former councils, Community Service Commission, and former Community Service Commissioners for supporting us for 42 years now. The town provides about 20% of our budget. We raise 20% ourselves, and the county provides the other 60%. Just so you know, you're getting your money's worth. Over the last 40 years, we've served 600,000 meals. We've provided over 1 million hours of informational and entertainment programming to seniors in need in our community. We're the only Los Gatos organization that does these things. I'm also very grateful to the mayor for agreeing to appear with us or come with us on April 1st when we kick off a new fundraising event based on these butterfly cards, which is the subject really of the proclamation, in connection with the attempt of many people to try to preserve the monarch butterflies. We are going to for donations, be giving out the food for butterflies, as well as these beautiful cards with a butterfly design on them to people who donate to us. And on April 1st, over at the Ark, will kick off that program. Now, this money is going to help us expand our program because, believe it or not, in a wealthy town like Los Gatos, there's still several hundred seniors who don't get adequate nutrition or adequate social contact during the day. And so we're going to be expanding our program. When we started, we served only at the Methodist Church. We now serve over at the Ark and over at the Town Seniors Project on Villa Vasona. So we're now serving more people than we did 40 years ago, and we're going to be increasing that over the next years because the demand for this is going up. So we're very appreciative for the proclamation. We're very appreciative to the mayor for helping us kick off our fundraising event. We hope everybody on the council will help us with this, and all of you in the community will help us with this. And if you want to come to lunch with us on the 1st, just call 354-0707, and you can have a meal with us. Thank you.
Thank you, former Mayor Carlson. And thank you, Live Oak, for all of the great work you do for our town and the seniors in our town. We really appreciate it. So thank you very much. And if you want to collect your stuff or leave it here. And now's the time for our closed session report. Do we have one?
Yes, good evening. Prior to the night's regular session, council met in closed session to discuss public employee appointment. The town manager, no action was taken. It requires reporting under the Brown Act.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Now is the time in our agenda where we have council matters, and this is an occasion for the members of the council to report to each other and to you about activities or meetings or events that they have attended, which we should know about because all of us do things besides come to these meetings. So I'll look to first Councilman Rennie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I attended two committees last week, actually both on Thursday afternoon, the Transportation and Parking Ad Hoc Committee with the Vice Mayor. I'll let her tell more about that. And I will focus a little more on what I did Thursday evening with the Cities Association. We heard a presentation by something called Neighborhood Housing Services, whose goal is to get people into below market rate housing by doing counseling, by helping them get loans, give loans and resell the loans, try to get help before people get foreclosed or when they get foreclosed, buy them so they don't lose them on the market. We also had a presentation by VTA that was bragging about how they were the halfway point of the first phase of the BART extension, ahead of schedule, under budget. They also told us some of their other plans. We also approved a $1,000 partnership from the Cities Association to join the Silicon Valley Leadership Group to join a regional economic summit with them. We also heard from a housing task force run by Supervisor Cortese, which helps permanent solutions for homeless. Another thing they mentioned is their Super Bowl planning that's going on, where the committee is trying to get all the cities to coordinate, and they'll be wanting to coordinate with us. So we do our celebration events at the same time, do marketing together, so forth. So hopefully you should be hearing about that. And in the manager's report in that meeting, one thing that was of interest, they talked about water, obviously being a problem, bringing water into our jurisdiction. The price is getting very expensive. It's about $150 an acre now, and they may go up as high as $8,000. So what they're planning to do is use recycled water, and instead of bringing it to you in purple pipes, to pump it into the recharge ponds so it'll go into the underground aquifers. So sort of a different way of using recycled water. So that's my report.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What is now called the Parking and Infrastructure Ad Hoc Committee met, and what we were doing is defining our substantive and procedural process. One of the things we did is we called ourselves Parking and Infrastructure. That means we're going to start by examining parking. Specifically within parking, we are examining downtown, beginning with the property located by Linden, Main Street, and Victory Lane. That's our first step. We're meeting every other week, and we will keep the community and the council apprised as we move forward.
Thank you. I will report that on this past Thursday, I went to the VTA Policy Advisory Committee. The things that are of interest from that are, as some of you may be aware, there is what should I say? There is an idea to float a potential bond measure in 2016. The VTA is calling that Envision Silicon Valley. They have done some polling and developed some goals and interesting items that they think might be part of any bond measure or tax measure that they put on the ballot. And I'm going to be forwarding those to the council for their input, and I'm sure that any member of the community that is interested in that can go to the VTA website and pull that up as well. It's called Envision Silicon Valley. The other thing that was of interest at that meeting were that the committee is composed of various cities, representatives from various cities, and 2 of those cities were reporting on their transportation issues and what they are doing with respect to them. They were Mountain View and Palo Alto. So if any of you came to our joint school meeting, Palo Alto presented a lot of really interesting information about what they're doing with respect to school traffic, biking, busing, transportation demand management. In fact, transportation demand management is something that Palo Alto is considering doing across the city. And in conjunction with the Parking Ad Hoc Committee, they're also considering things like alternative pricing structures, I shouldn't say that. It is a structure, but alternative pricing schemes for parking in the downtown area and throughout the city to try to alleviate parking congestion. Mountain View is interesting because, as some of you may know, Mountain View is the beneficiary of a shuttle system that is for the community-wide, that is funded by Google. It's 4 electric buses, and they've worked with the city of Mountain View to come up with stops that serve, for example, seniors, that serve middle schoolers, and other interesting items that we learned about at that meeting that people in the community ought to be aware of, and I think people on the council should be aware of. So that's my report. Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. On Wednesday, March 11th, I attended the West Valley Sanitation District Board of Directors meeting. I was the chairperson, and the most significant event, in addition to the general business, was we received the certificate from State Senator Jim Bell, and it is because of the transparency of our organization, so I'm very proud of that. On March 12th, I attended the Treatment Plant Advisory Committee meeting at San Jose City Hall. And the most significant event of that meeting was, at the end, there was a brief discussion about, rather than us taking on this $1.5 billion sewer treatment plant rebuilding project, perhaps there would be a better alternative by outsourcing the whole plant to a third-party vendor. So staff was instructed at that meeting to go back and bring back some information for us at our next Treatment Plant Advisory Committee meeting. That's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Leonardis. Councilwoman Sayak.
Thank you. On March 5, the mayor and I participated in the last meeting of the Housing Element Advisory Board. At that meeting, we agreed to forward a recommendation to the Planning Commission, which will ultimately come to Town Council in May. As a reminder to those following it, we are mandated by state law to identify 619 housing units in the next 8 years. So our job was to identify and provide policies and strategies to meet that state law. And again, that will next come to the Planning Commission sometime in April, and then Town Council in May.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is manager matters, and I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce a new face at our podium up here, our rostrum, and that's our interim town manager, Les White. Les comes to us from serving as interim town manager once in Los Gatos, Parks and Public Works manager interim, I believe, in Los Gatos, city manager of San Jose. He has vast experience and wisdom that he's sharing with us while we transition to a new permanent town manager. So welcome, Les, and
Thank you. I hope I can live up to the wisdom part. I would just like to mention one quick thing for for the benefit of the people in the audience and anybody watching, that we still have a number of vacancies on various boards and commissions. And applications are due Friday, April 3rd for these, and it's the Arts and Cultural Commission, Parks, Community and Services, Personnel Board, Plan Development, Zoning Study Committee. There's about 5 of them, and we are in dire need of adult applicants for those. We are also looking for youth in the grade range of 8 to 12 for a variety of boards and commissions. We do have a number of applicants there, but we still have opportunities on the Youth Commission, the Library Board, Community and Senior Services, and Parks Boards. And if anybody's interested, they can contact the town clerk, or they can check it out on our town website.
Thank you very much. Now is the time in our agenda when we consider consent items, but I'm going to do something that I neglected to do. But those of you that I look out in the audience, and I think all of you have been to a meeting before, so you know to silence your device. But if somehow you've forgotten to silence your device, if you would please take the time to do that, I'd appreciate it. But now is the time to consider our consent calendar. These are items that have been identified by the staff as being relatively straightforward, such that they could be acted upon in one motion. That being said, anyone on the council or anyone in the audience can pull any item from the consent calendar. And if an item is pulled, we simply hear it in its normal order as a public hearing. So I have 6 items on the consent calendar. I'll look to the council first. Is there anyone who'd like to pull any item from the consent calendar? Councilman Rennie.
I'd like to pull number 2, the plan development, please.
Okay. Anyone in the audience? I have a card regarding item 5. Ms. Dorner, are you here? Ah, there you are. And I assume I'm looking at you sitting in there in the back, and you're hard to miss. You'll see when she comes to the podium. You are pulling number 5, correct? Okay. All right, so we will hear those in their normal order as public hearings. With respect to the remaining items on the consent agenda, do I have a motion? Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to approve the consent calendar exclusive of items 2 and 5.
Is there a second? Councilman Leonardis?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It passes unanimously. So we will move to item number 2, and Councilman Rennie, if you could give us just a brief description of why you pulled the item, or if you have a question that can be resolved, let us know.
Okay, so the item is about changing the coloring on the houses for the David on homes in the hillsides, and they our hillside our hillside guidelines require a light reflective value of 30 or below. They are requesting to use an averaging of all the different colors so that it averages below 30. And so I'm okay with the averaging method. That looks good to me. I'm okay with all the different colors of the houses they came up with. My concern, or small concern anyway, is the next person that buys the house can change from the colors that are here and can use the light averaging method. So my concern was, well, somebody could change the color and paint their trim bright pink, but then put enough dark colors on the back of their house so that they're still below the 30, but then we would still see them from the valley floor, which is part of the idea, is to make sure that if they're more than 25% visible from the valley floor, that they have certain colors and the light reflective values stay below that. So I did ask staff some questions on this. What I was considering was that we should add to it that you can use the value averaging, light value averaging method, but not use a light value above a certain amount, so that bright pink colors, for example, or bright blues or something like that could not be used. And my question for staff was, where do I set this limit? It looks like in this color palette they've used up to 61. I thought I saw 68, but I only found 61 when I re-looked. So my question for staff is, what is the value for, say, pink or blue or something like that, so we would have some idea of where I might suggest a limit.
Okay, thank you. Let me just ask Ms. Pavetti to give us a generalized staff report, and then if there's additional questions, or Mr. Paulson is standing up. Are you the one to give us the staff report? Why don't you give us a staff report on this item, and then we'll ask questions of you and see if anyone else wants to talk.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, council members. As was illustrated, this was before the Town Council in October of last year. The council provided direction. Staffs worked with the applicant to get additional information, which they provided to address this. To Mr. Rennie's question specifically, there isn't currently a limiting factor. That is something that staff definitely would consider at the direction of the council. The light reflective values generally go from a 0 to 1, which is black, all the way to a 99 to 100, which is a white. So there's various gradations throughout there, whether it's pink, blue, yellow, or they may be much lighter from a light reflective value, but may appear brighter. So it's a little challenging maybe to pick that threshold. However, staff's here and we can try to help through that conversation. As is written in the staff report, the plan development request requires a modification to the PD. If we want to add additional language to that, we've offered a starting point from a revised performance standard 15. The applicant's here as well. If any additional questions need answering by the applicant. However, I think we can definitely choose, if there is an outside number that you have in mind, we can certainly add that to the performance standard if that is the will of the council.
Vice Mayor Spector.
Thank you. I would actually be looking, I think it's a valid issue, and I would be looking to staff to answer that question. I mean, what you said is you would be, looking for a direction from the council, whereas this would be an issue that I would be looking to staff to tell us what can we do to address the concern that has been raised.
Thank you. And I probably should have mentioned there's other elements of the Hillside Development Standard Guidelines that go along with just the light reflective value number. And those are colors that blend with the natural surroundings and to limit contrast between the house and any trim elements. So those are things that we would be looking at. So the limitations that would be placed on it from an LRV 30 value for all the exterior materials, you would be challenged to have a pink or a blue or a yellow that may blend with the natural surroundings, but also that would be something that staff would be able to support. We would work with an applicant, as we do with all applicants, on colors and other various topics to ensure that we are meeting the spirit and the intent, as well as the requirements of the light reflective value requirement.
Other questions for Mr. Paulson? Councilwoman Sayoc.
Thank you. So, Mr. Paulson, if someone purchases the home and wants to change the color, there's a deed restriction that now states that there's an average value, it has to blend with the natural color. Who actually ensures that that meets condition 15? Does it come back to the planning department? Is it the responsibility of the developer? Who makes that decision?
Well, the deed restriction would run with the land.
Mm-hmm.
So any future owner that bought a property or a subsequent owner, when they get their title documents, would see that requirement. If someone decided to paint their house without consulting with staff, then we would have to go verify and get information that shows that it does indeed comply with the deed restriction. And if it didn't, then we would have to have them modify that so that it did meet the requirements of the deed restriction.
Other questions? I actually have a question. The light reflectivity level number 30 comes from our Hillside Design Guidelines, correct? And that also contains the language that you were talking about regarding blending with the vegetation, the hill, et cetera. That's already contained in our Hillside Guidelines.
Correct.
And that last time the council met on this, the issue was that the guidelines were reflected, no pun intended, in the resolution, and it simply referred to paint color, so that staff was actually looking at the number on a paint can versus the actual entire house. So my question is, Councilman Rennie's question, wouldn't that be something that would, if the council wanted to change somehow the hillside design guidelines, that's where that would come in versus doing it ad hoc on a particular development.
That is definitely another opportunity to address this issue along with any other hillside development standard and guideline issues if the council requested that staff look at reviewing strictly this issue or the hillside development standard guidelines as a whole.
Okay, other questions? Vice Mayor Spector.
When you use the word, I'm trying to put my arms around what we're all talking about here and if we've really addressed it. When you say this issue, what is the issue you're talking about?
So for us, it's the compliance with the light reflective value requirement from the hillside development standards and guidelines. When we last spoke, the applicant was actually proposing more than one method. They actually had requested originally that some of the houses be permitted to use the originally proposed colors, which exceed even the averaging light reflective value of 30. They have since removed that request, so now they are currently only requesting the averaging option to be used. So for this particular plan development, the light reflective value would be permitted to use an average over all of the materials, and so that would be the modification to the plan development performance standard.
Understood, and that being the case, doesn't our condition 15 in the ordinance address that issue as far as this PD is concerned?
It does.
And what would be the concern in your mind for future developments, if you have one?
I don't know that we have concerns. Staff has offered comments in the staff report that from here forward, no longer dealing with just the paint or the main body color as has been practiced previously, and rather looking at all of the exterior materials in total. And staff also believes that there is an opportunity for using the averaging method for other sites, pending, as long as the applicants provide adequate analysis and justification for those. We would be looking at visibility, impacts, and issues to that nature. So I think that's what staff is proposing, as is written in the staff report. If the council doesn't agree with that and wishes staff to look at those in a different manner, where maybe as one instance that all of the LRV requirements must be met with all exterior materials for other projects other than this specific plan development.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Paulson? Ms. Pravetti?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If it would be helpful to the council, on page 3 of the staff report, we have the proposed language for the condition that would replace what's currently in this particular plan development. And as you can see, we're suggesting striking the word paint and really focusing on exterior colors for all lots. There is the acknowledgement of the averaging approach, and if it is the will of the council to identify a maximum light reflective value, 61 appears to be the highest value in the data that has been submitted to the council, so that way you could use that number if you wish. And again, I do want to point out that the condition acknowledges that the colors need to blend with the natural color of the vegetation that surround the site, as well as conform to other elements of the hillside development standards. So there's broader language than just the averaging to really make sure we're getting something that is suitable to the natural environment of our hillsides. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pravetti. Any other questions for either Ms. Pravetti or Mr. Paulson? Thank you. And I should say, because I neglected to do so, for anyone in the audience, what we're discussing is Plan Development Application PD 14003. It's actually a PD that's being built now. It's known as the Highlands. It is on Shady Lane off Short, for those of you who may be aware of it. And it's several addresses in the hillside, and we're discussing the compliance with the exterior colors and our hillside design guidelines. So that said, is there anyone else that wants to talk to the council about this? Sir, if you just fill out a card, but you can do that after, and then when you get to the podium, let us know your name and your affiliation, please.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I'm Dennis Rosario with David on Homes, Vice President of Construction. Also here with me this evening is Jeff Thayer, our Vice President of Land Acquisition, and our Project Superintendent, Joe Gregorich. I appreciate the staff and council allowing us to bring this back before you one more time. And as Mr. Paulson indicated, we have withdrawn our request for the architect's original color schemes with the intent of going to the averaging color schemes that's before you and you've seen on the exhibits that we've submitted. We think that's very appropriate. There are a few homes that are compliant with the exception of a trim color or a small portion of color. When we were last at the council, we presented to you averaging schemes based on the front and rear elevations of the home. At council's request or direction, we then went back and studied all four sides of the homes. What we found through that is that the sides, because of veneers or window exposures or roof exposures being less than on the front or the rear, we had to tweak some of the colors in order to maintain the LRV 30 average throughout the house. So in response to your request as to if somebody goes with a pink color or a very bright color on the trim and darkens the body or the primary color of the house to maintain the LRV 30, there are, I think, a couple things that we could suggest or have the council consider with a minor modification of the language that staff has proposed, which I would suggest to you, and that would be willing, Davidon would be willing to do. One is that, while I am not an artist by any means, I believe that white can be about the brightest color that we can get. Original color schemes for this project had particularly lots 1 and 14, in Spanish elevations with a very bright white. Larry Cannon's response was to bring those colors down in the original letter that he had proposed for the Planning Commission. That got us down to the mid-60 range, I believe was his recommendation at the time. White being the absence of color, I believe it gets to the brightest and starts to approach the 100 scale on the LRV averaging, or excuse me, on the LRV value. So while we do a deed restriction on every lot, we could amend that deed restriction in the language that staff has proposed to include that the body or the primary color of the house not exceed the color LRV value of what we propose. So if for instance, the color is a 28 on the primary, we would limit it to 28. That way, any trim color could not exceed that. Lastly, and very quickly, all the colors, any modifications of the colors have to go before the HOA board, and I don't think the community would support its own members from going to a bright pink or a bright blue. I think they would want to keep something harmonious to the community. With that, I remain available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there questions for Mr. Rosari? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Lee Quintana.
I would just ask that you consider that this is a type of policy that shouldn't be done on a case-by-case basis, but perhaps if it's something that the council wants to consider, that the hillside design standards and guidelines should be amended so it's not a case-by-case that has to be looked at every single time. And my other comment is that and I haven't read the report, so I may be speaking without knowledge, but it seems to me that the most important element is the siding of the house, because that's what we can see from the valley floor, and there are obviously a lot of houses up there that have colors that are clearly visible from the valley floor. Thank you.
See if there's questions for you before you go away. Nope, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and look to the council for any more questions they may have of staff, comments, and or a motion. Councilman Rennie.
So since I started this, I guess I'll see if I can finish it. I guess my suggestion maybe would be two parts. It seems like the light value averaging scheme seems like a good idea. That's something we may want to add to our hillside guidelines. So that would be one idea, was to go off and amend that. And then at that time, consider, should there also be a, where you can get more information, should there be a maximum value used, as I was proposing. Then the second part of it would be, I do like the gentleman from Devodon's idea of adding to the deed restriction language that they can't change it from what, the LRV average value that they have now.
Thank you. I'm hearing that as comment, not a motion, unless you want to convert that to a motion.
I can convert it to a motion, but I probably need better wording, correct?
Well, let's see if there's any other comments, questions, or a motion. Okay, I don't see any, so if you want to give it a try, you can.
Okay, so the first, shall I do it as two motions or one motion? I guess let's, Vice Mayor's going to help me out.
Well, there's a pencil up here, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Rennie might want to look at the first page of our staff report where we have a recommended motion, and he may be able to use that as the foundation for whatever changes or modifications he wants to make.
The first page doesn't have very much in it. It seems to me we need to go to section 15 of the draft ordinance.
Councilman Rennie, do you want to go ahead and try a motion, or does someone else want to make a comment, try a motion? Or you can go ahead.
Let me make the motion in two motions. Maybe it's easier that way. So the first motion is to amend our, I guess this would mean having the Planning Commission look at it, correct? To amend our hillside guidelines to add the option of the light refractive averaging, and to research and come up with a maximum light refractive value that could be used in that averaging.
All right, so I understand your motion to be essentially to work toward amending the hillside design guidelines. Let's see if there's any second for that. Councilwoman Sayak.
If I could, I'd like to make a comment, and then if the maker of the motion agrees, I'll be willing to second. I'd like to just modify the language as appropriate. I know when this was studied, we looked specifically at this PD just because the homes that are being identified for the potential averaging were actually on the inside of the valley, and so visibility was less of a concern as some of the other homes. And so I would recommend that the Planning Commission and/or the Planning Commission look at potential changes as appropriate instead of a general change.
Councilman Rennie, do you understand the proposed amendment? Because I'm not sure, Councilwoman Sayak, whether you're referring to the specific plan development or you were referring to the hillside design guidelines in general. And I think the motion was in general.
Was it specific to? Correct. Was it in general or just to?
Councilman Rennie.
So it was to amend the hillside guidelines to allow the use, we could say where appropriate, of the light value averaging method, and to determine a maximum light value that can be used in that averaging.
Then I'd be willing to second it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any comments on the motion before I call the question? Okay. I'm actually not going to support the motion as it's worded because I would like it to be more specific with a direction to consider if we are going to go so far as amend the hillside design guidelines, which we worked so hard on for so many years, that we need to be giving that a lot more thought and having it come back to council in a different form than here. So I will not be supporting the motion. Any other comments on the motion before I call the question? Okay, all in favor? Opposed?
No.
No. So it passes 3-2 with Mayor Jensen and Councilman Leonardis voting no. And is there a second part of your motion, Councilman Rennie?
So the second part of my motion would be I guess the second part, sorry, I had originally planned to make the motion that we should put in a maximum value. I did like the suggestion from David on. I'm not exactly sure how to word it. Any help?
Well, you can go forward and form a motion, or you can not do so, and I can look to other council people for comments, questions, or a motion if you would prefer.
Or Madam Mayor, if you'd like, I would
Ms.
be
Rivetti?
happy to assist if that would be appropriate, just as a starting point.
Well, let's see if there's another council person who is ready to make a motion first. Anyone? Okay. Then, Mr. Rennie, do you want Ms. Privetti's assistance with your motion?
Actually, I'd be
Councilwoman
willing
Sayah.
to make a try at it.
Oh, a motion?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, but first, just some legal things. Do we need to waive the reading?
Yes, why don't we?
Okay, so first motion, can I move to waive the reading of the title of the zone change ordinance by the town clerk?
Okay, I'll second that, or do you want to make that part of your continuing motion?
Okay, I'll make all of them. I'll go ahead and make the required findings that no further environmental analysis is required for the proposed PD modification. I'll move to waive the reading of the zone change ordinance and move to introduce the ordinance affecting the zone change, which is reflected on page 3 of the staff report, which is condition number 15 in our condition of approvals. So, as it is written currently, color reflectivity deed restriction with the an averaging of a light reflectivity value requirement or 30 or less, or shall be no more than this the body of the color shall be no more than, what was it? Than the color as approved by the developer at the time of application.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilman Rennie. Any discussion on that motion? And this is specific to the PD.
Absolutely, specific to Plan Development Application PD-14-003.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. So I'll call item 5, which is pulled by Angelina Dorer. Why don't you come up to the podium, Ms. Dorner, and if you would, give us maybe a 20-second rundown of why you've pulled it, and that won't count against your 3 minutes, and then we'll go from there.
And I was just wondering if you guys wanted this door closed.
I'm sure that our staff will figure that out, but why don't you come on up?
I'm requesting that this item be pulled from the consent calendar primarily as it relates to 449 Santa Cruz, because I'd just like to understand what that work will entail.
Okay, why don't you have a seat, and we will go through our staff report and our regular hearing. And this is PPW job number 14-813-9921 and 14-821-2102, annual curb, gutter, and sidewalk maintenance project, which includes a lot of different projects. Ms. Peterson.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. We are requesting approval of the plans and specifications for the annual curb and gutter sidewalk maintenance project and also the public access infrastructure project, authorizing the town manager to award and execute a construction agreement in an amount not to exceed $392,969, including contingencies, and authorizing staff to execute future change orders in an amount not to exceed 15%. So this is the town's annual curb, gutter, and sidewalk replacement project. And we also have funding from Community Development Block Grant Program for improvements to mobility for the aging and physically impaired residents. The project will repair damaged curb, gutter, and sidewalks in various areas throughout the town. And we have prioritized these based on citizen concerns that have called in work orders that have been verified by staff. Also, areas that staff has noted that need to be repaired that have high traffic, pedestrian traffic, and additionally, other areas that staff has identified and areas that we're going to be coming in and doing overlay project. So that's been the priority. And I am happy to answer questions. I know there was one question.
Let me start out by asking you about Ms. Dorner Ray's 449 North Santa Cruz. Why don't you address that for her and for us?
Sure. So if we have a schedule in here on what we're going to be doing. So I would need to, no, thank you.
It's actually on page 1 of your appendix.
Okay, thank you. So what we're identifying in the schedule is that we're going to be removing some hardscape area, we're going to be removing and replacing a driveway approach, and we're going to be removing and replacing some curb and gutter. Additionally, going to be installing some new Villa Hermosa bricks. The majority of these areas, it's due to that the improvements are cracked or they have been lifted by trees. We consider them a hazard, for tripping or, some sort of trip and fall for the town from a liability standpoint. So we're trying to get in there and fix those and make it safer for the public.
City member, yes, Councilwoman Seah.
Could you remind me, 449, what are some of the stores around there so I can remember which part of North Santa Cruz this is?
And I'm sorry, I don't have that information exactly what's in front of there.
Councilman Rennie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I see that there's a bunch of numbers, addresses, 453, 465, 431, 470. They all sound like they're close together. Are you replacing most of this area or just piecemeal?
So what we do is we try to get in an area, and then if we have, as I said, based on a priority, a call that's come in, then we'll try to also fix other improvements that are cracked or lifted in that same area, because that way we have a contractor that can come in and work in the same area. We get a cost benefit from doing it that way.
Other questions? Thank you, Ms. Peterson. Councilman Leonardis, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. Ms. Peterson, how do we arrive at the amount of $392,000? I understand it's a number of bids that are added up, but is there some maximum budget on this on an annual basis?
Well, for the budget for this year, which I believe is identified in the staff report, I can pull that. So the budget funding for this year was $329,585, minus some encumbrance of $3,000. And additionally, we did add to that this community development grant funding that we had for $66,384 for a total of $395,969.
Thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do have a card from Ms. Dorner.
Hello, I'm Angelia Dorner, a proud resident of the Almond Grove, and surprise, I'm not here to talk to you about the Almond Grove. I'm here to talk to you about this consent item, which is about the annual curb and gutter, as previously explained by our town engineer. Primary goals being public safety, and improving our quality of our town streets. And I wanted to commend our PPW department because this plan does include removal and replacement of 20 trees. I'm glad that they're replacing trees because all around town, not just in my neighborhood, there are just chopped off trees, which I think are creating significant dangers to pedestrians and people getting out of their cars. These stumps, one of them is a picture less than a block from here, the other is about 4 blocks from here. So I'm glad that they are replacing these trees, and hopefully something can be done about these kinds of situations as well. I do also see that they're installing root barriers for 13 of the places where they're replacing sidewalks, which is a great thing. I hope they do it everywhere, because that's what's causing our problem. I also am just using this as an example of Maricopa Drive. I'm thrilled to see that PPW is doing a hopscotch approach where they're only replacing the sidewalk that needs to be replaced, house by house or as you walk down the street. You don't need to replace everything if it doesn't need it. The reason why I'm bringing up 449 Santa Cruz is because this property is on the west side of Santa Cruz. It goes from Walgreens down to about Sweet Peas. The entire project that's being discussed here on that line item all relates to this one specific property. Now you can notice over here where there's the jut outs, there are the Hermosa bricks, and those are pulled up by the trees and do need to be replaced and handled. But the sidewalk, that's 1,100 square feet of sidewalk, which is going to be removed. I'm not sure, there's nothing in this plan that says what they're going to do with it once they remove all of that hardscape. To give you an example, 10 feet is from here to that wall. So 10 by 10 is 1 square of that concrete, times 11. So it's the entire thing that's being replaced or removed. Take another look at this. I don't see a single thing wrong with this entire strip. I mean, it's beautiful. There's absolutely nothing wrong. It includes all the inlaid bricks. The building is definitely under lease. I don't know if we have some arrangement with a commercial property owner. I'm not quite sure why we're spending the money on this when we have so many other places that desperately need to have this money spent. So when it comes to that budget, I'm not sure how much is being spent on that property out of that 359. There's a contingency of 33,000 related to this specific plan, and then they're asking for another
Ms. Dorner?
54,000.
Thank you.
There we go.
Almost. But your 3 minutes is up. So let's see if there's questions for you.
Okay.
Councilman Rennie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mrs. Dorner, obviously you've looked into these. Are there other areas also that you think they have planned that really don't need it, or was this just the one that really stuck out?
This is the one that stuck out, really stuck out. I think that most of them, I actually just are places that I normally drive by. So especially up by University and Lark, that area there really needs to be improved. They did do some asphalt work over in the Town Terrace area and stuff sometime over the last several years. So improving those sidewalks makes sense as well. But this particular strip, I just don't get, because it's the entire thing in front of that building. And I couldn't find a single pimple on that sidewalk or crack or anything.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to talk to us about curb and gutter replacement and repair? Okay, seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to look to the council for questions of staff, motion, or discussion. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through the mayor, if we could have staff address the question raised with regard to 449 North Santa Cruz.
Yes, we can. Ms. Peterson.
Yes, so if you look on the schedule on page 1, you'll see that what it shows is removal of hardscape, and then it shows a remove and replace driveway approach, but you'll notice it doesn't show remove and replace sidewalk. So what we're doing in that area is we're not actually removing and replacing sidewalk, we're just removing hardscape that's in between the trees that's been lifted up by the roots and was previously put in concrete at one time and is a tripping hazard.
Vice Mayor, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Other questions, comments, or a motion? Okay. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that the town council approve plans and specifications for the annual curb, gutter, and sidewalk maintenance project and public access infrastructure project, and authorizing the town to advertise the project for bid, authorize the town manager to award and execute a construction agreement in an amount not to exceed $392,969, including contingencies, and authorizing the staff to execute future change orders in an amount not to exceed 15% of the contract award amount.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilman Rennie. Questions or discussion regarding the motion before I call the question? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Me. Yeah, no.
Me?
Me.
It's opposed by Councilman Leonardis. Passes 4-1. Which brings us to item number 7, conditional use permit application U-12-002, and environmental impact report EIR 13-001, project location. Sorry?
Verbal communications.
Oh, I'm being reminded that I've neglected to call verbal communications. I don't have any cards, but verbal communication is the time in our agenda when anyone in the audience can address us on something that is not on the agenda. So if you are here and you've already spoken about the 2 items that we have called, we have closed the public hearing on Hillbrook. But if there's something that you would like to discuss that is not on tonight's agenda, now is the time for you to do that. Okay, seeing no one. I'm going to go back to item number 8, which I've given you the numbers for it. So, I'm sorry, 7. I'm looking at 8 in my folder, and I don't know why. We all know it is Hillbrook School. I'm calling Hillbrook School. This is a continuation of this item from 2 previous meetings. January 13th, and I'm not remembering the other time that we heard it. Ms. Pravetti?
February 17th.
Thank you. And we had closed the public hearing to comments at our public meeting. However, we did not close any communication with the council, and we have continued to receive both written communication, email, and I know that we have had meetings in our since our last meeting with members of the community, so I'm going to look to members of the council to make any disclosures regarding any meetings that they might have had since February 17th. Councilman Rennie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I met with 3 neighbors from Marchmont and 1 from Longmeadow at a meeting at Pete's Coffee. I also met with the head of school and 2 of the board members. When was that? Last Thursday, between my other 2 meetings. And I also met with the neighbors in the Ann Arbor area on Sunday afternoon.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have met with Mr. Hammers from representing Hillbrook, met with several members of the Ann Arbor neighborhood, and met with several members of the Marchmont neighborhood. And the information I received from them was nothing other than what is reflected in the materials, specifically the letters we have received from those groups.
I have met with various residents who I'm going to describe as representing the interests of the neighbor appellants. I have met with a group I will describe as representing the interests of the Ann Arbor neighborhood, and I have met with a group that I will describe as representing the interests of Hillbrook School.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. I have met with a couple of the neighborhood groups, and I read all the correspondence in the packet, and that is it for me.
Councilwoman Sayak.
Thank you. Similar to all others, I've met with representatives from both appellants as well as neighbors from the Ann Arbor Wallens Way.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or disclosures before I begin discussion on this matter? Okay. So I feel like I'm doing a TV show here. As you'll all recall from our last episode, we had a motion that was put on the floor that proposed a conditional use permit that was ultimately defeated by the council. We have now before us, but we did pass a motion to request traffic data from Hillbrook School, which we did receive, which I know that all of you have received and analyzed. I know the council has all received different analysis of those numbers. We've also received analysis of those numbers from the staff. And I'm going to look to Ms. Pravetti for any kind of staff report that's appropriate at this time.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you mentioned, the town did post on their website for public review all of the traffic data that we received from Hillbrook School. As we continue to obtain data, we will be continuing to post it. The staff report that was issued last Thursday addressed the traffic considerations, vesting, and other topics that came up at the February hearing. In addition, today we issued a desk item that did a little bit of staff analysis of the data that I know is coming late, but we thought it would be instructive for you to not just see the raw data, but also understand how one might look at it. I know you have a lot of different choices before you from both sides of the appellants. We wanted you to see what the baseline traffic information was before Hillbrook School did any TDM, and if I may ask Ms. Gilmore to perhaps put up the slide. We have a table in the staff report that's on the top of page 3, and for those in the audience, we're going to post it up above, and I think we can make it a little bit bigger. So the bottom part of the slide shows the baseline of average daily trips of 880. This is before any of the traffic demand management. We also, as required by the California Environmental Quality Act, did analyze the proposed increase in enrollment, and the analysis there showed an average daily traffic of 1156 trips, so that's another option for your consideration. And then we analyzed the fall 2014 semester data, and using the fall data, the real-time data, the average daily trips were 978 for the fall semester. This is within the EIR limits, as you can see. So those are some choices if you wish to look at average daily trips. The other approach, which the council started to discuss in February, was this notion of identifying a maximum. And so looking at the data, again, the real data that we received for the fall semester, we found that maximum daily traffic volumes were 47% higher than average daily volumes. So using that metric, we then calculated what the maximum would be using the different ADT as a base. So for example, if we looked at the project EIR and we saw that the average daily traffic was 1156, applying the 47% on top of that would give a maximum of 1699. Similarly, if we use the baseline of 880 and apply to 47% max, that would increase a maximum to 1294. You can see the range in the numbers. If the council wanted to provide some exception days, as we discussed, maybe open house or other plays or other types of activities, there may be the opportunity for exception days. And if the range of days that we heard last time were 5 and 10, so using those metrics, we also calculated what a max would be with 10 exception days. And again, looking at the very last line, if we look at the 880 as the average daily trips and assumed 10 exception days, that would allow a maximum of 13% over the ADT, which would bring us to 994 trips total. So those are some additional ways of looking at the information. We've also studied the new Nelson Nygaard information, and staff from Parks and Public Works as well as planning are available to answer any other questions. But since this was late in your packet, we wanted to walk you through the data. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see if there's questions. Vice Mayor Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think you may have somewhat indirectly answered this question, but the data on the screen right now does not encompass the most recent information that went from June of last year to February of this year. Is that correct?
We took a full semester for the fall, which was part of that data set. But we didn't look at, we didn't include the summer months in this analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councilman Rennie.
So I guess I want to, maybe it's a question, maybe it's just a comment. This data did not take out any of the exception days, so we ended up with very large max, 47% is quite large compared to your averages. If you looked at the Nelson-Nygaard, for example, they took out those days that were the planned exception days, and they get only about an 18.5% difference between the max. And you also have in your staff report a table that shows with the exception days taken out, which I think is useful for the other council members to see that the average on that is 718, and then you extrapolate to 944, which is a smaller number than what's up here if you take out the planned exception days. I guess the question is that correct?
Yes, so we have shown in the fall semester data, we did provide removing 10 days, and with that removal of the 10 days, what the average and the highest ADT would, or the ADT and the maximum would be for those. So yes, that's correct.
Other questions? Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. In the staff report, since this is an appeal of a planning commission decision, normally we were given the options of how can I phrase this? I'll just put it the way I know it. Finding the reason why the appeal was filed, the planning commission erred, they didn't have discretion, or there was new information presented, and I didn't see that in the staff report mentioned, but I just wanted to bring up that point.
Thank you. We actually did add on page 4 of the desk item today the various findings, one of which the town council may choose to meet if it chooses to uphold one or more of the appeals, which does list out those items that you just mentioned, that there was an error or abuse of discretion, 2, there was new information, or 3, there was an issue or policy over which the commission did not have discretion. So that's available for your use.
Thank you.
Other questions? Before I go to Councilman Rennie, I actually have a general question. Another issue that came up in our staff reports, and I know that it has come up in meetings and correspondence, is the issue of if the council were to adopt a new CUP, when and how does it vest? And I just want to make sure that I have the correct understanding. And my understanding is that when Hillbrook takes an action under any new CUP that may be adopted by the council, then, or I should say a substantial action, towards those conditions, that the document that is the CUP vests. And that document contains various conditions, including it might make things incremental, it might make things dependent upon one thing or the other. So that while the document vests, the right to take an action under the document remains subject to meeting the conditions in the document. Is that correct?
Yes. The actual vesting act that will take place that would vest this new CUP is the adding of 1 student. So there is certain things that they could do. For example, collect the data for the next 6 months and decide not to add a student, and that wouldn't be vesting. But once they add 1 student, then all of the conditions kick in, and they have to meet all those conditions to add any further students.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Rennie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a couple questions. I'm looking at the staff report that was dated March 12th, so it's a little bit older, but we keep getting updated ones, but my notes are on that one. You talked about a traffic counting system for when this was implemented, and my first question, this is probably more for, I guess, Director Morley, but how are you going to deal with bad data points, for example? I know in the Nelson Nygaard report, they mentioned removing bad data points. Do you have some methodology for that, or do we need to, put that in our CUP, how to deal with the bad data points?
Thank you for the question. Matt Morley, Director of Parks and Public Works. In the staff report, we outline a little bit of how we would handle bad data with the expectation that there will be periodic data points as it's provided to us now, for instance, an hour or several hours that data is not available, and that we did see that in the initial data set collection. From staff's perspective, if it were to hit a larger time frame, we would work with the school to put in a backup system, for instance, a host counter until the data was being collected on a routine basis again.
You have a follow-up?
So I guess slightly different question. In your report, you also did talk about basically an accuracy where you're comparing between the hose counter and the census method, and you come up with, you saw the error was between 0 and 6%. So my question is, was that a systematic error in one direction, or was it sometimes low, sometimes high? And the reason I ask that is if you're going with an average that is your limit, basically, you might average out errors. But if you're trying to measure a maximum, now you need to think about something that was, if your limit was 880 and you got a real value was 879, it might read as 930, and then you would be in violation, for example.
So that data did swing both high and low when we looked at the errors.
Thank you. That's it for now.
Other questions for staff? Okay. So, fellow council members, we do have before us a desk item. We have our staff report for today, which contains the traffic information, various analyses of the traffic information. We have what I'm going to call a CUP template, and we also have a sheet which identifies issues. So I invite any and all members of the council to make comments, attempt an entire motion, attempt smaller motions that we can discuss going forward, or in any other way get us started on this discussion. Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. And of course, I will be depending on the support of the council on this, but I intend to make a motion. And my motion would start by upholding the Planning Commission decision with modifications and deny the appeals, because I don't think they erred and I don't think they acted outside of their discretion. And we have significant new information since the Planning Commission decision. So that's where I start. And I want to work off the template because I think it's a very good tool which was provided by staff, and go through line by line or paragraph by paragraph. So it may take a while, and I'm sure that you'll all be patient with me. And I'm trying to get to the template in my book. So bear with me for a moment.
Attachment 34, Vice Mayor, while you're looking.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. While Mr. Leonardis is looking, I also found the template extremely helpful, so thank you, staff, for that. However, my concern would be doing the entire template in one motion. I don't understand if that's going to be the case or not. That would be difficult for this one council person.
And I will echo that would be a little difficult for me as well, but I think what I understand you to be saying is that you're going to go through each paragraph as we go, and then stop and look for discussion with respect to that? Or,
that is correct.
Your motions? Okay. All right, great. So
all right.
Go forth and conquer.
Thank you, Mayor Jansen. So beginning with the first 3 paragraphs that say approval, expiration, and use, I would leave those as written. So.
Okay, is everyone on the template? Let's make sure first. I'm looking at the council. So, Councilman Leonardis, let me make sure, just for the rest of the council and myself, that I understand that while you would make a motion to deny the appeal with respect to the Planning Commission, what you intend to do is to put another CUP in place. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So the initial part of your motion is with respect to, on page 1 of attachment 34, to essentially approve of the first 3 paragraphs that are in caps: approval, expiration, and use. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. So is there a second with respect to that particular motion?
I'll second that.
It's seconded by Councilman Rennie. Questions or comments? Councilwoman Vice Mayor Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The question I have with regard to those 3 paragraphs or sections deals with the portion called approval. And the second sentence under approval states that any changes or modifications shall be approved by the Community Development Director, the Development Review Committee, the Planning Commission, or Town Council, depending upon the scope of the changes. The difficulty I have with that sentence, and it's come up other times in our ordinances, is I find it too vague. I think that any modifications to this CUP should have a defined body or individual who would be responsible, rather than this generic sentence. So, with that being said, I hate to do this, but if that sentence stays in, I will not be supporting the motion.
Or would you like to propose an amendment to the maker of the motion and see if the seconder approves?
I would request, or I would move that the second sentence, beginning with any changes and ending with scope of the changes, be removed from the motion.
All right, I hear that as an independent motion, correct?
Correct.
And I will second that. Discussions or questions regarding that independent motion? Councilwoman Sayak.
Just a question then. How would we take care of any requested changes or modifications?
Before I call on the Vice Mayor, my understanding in making the second is that as I go through this template, there are built-in reviews that are already occurring with particular bodies that are built into this template. So if the council were to adopt those, that would get taken care of. Vice Mayor.
I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I may just add, if we take out that language, then the default would be the language that's in our current town code. So essentially, if the applicant wished to modify anything, they would need to apply for a conditional use permit modification that's subject to all of our typical hearings and environmental clearance.
Thank you, Ms. Pravetti. So I'll go to Councilman Leonardis. Or actually, we're on the independent motion. Vice Mayor Spector, does that change anything about your motion?
Nope.
Okay, so we have a motion to remove the second sentence in the paragraph, and it's up there if anybody wants to follow along with this riveting discussion. The second sentence in the first paragraph that's titled approval. All right, so all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. So now let's go back to your motion, Councilman Leonardis. So are you maintaining your original motion with now that second sentence from the approval paragraph removed?
Yes.
And seconder?
Yes.
Okay, so now discussion or questions on the motion? Ms. Pravetti.
And I'm so sorry to do this, but on March 12th, we had identified on page 4 of the staff report more thorough expiration language that neglected to get into the template, but we do have it available if Ms. Savage would like to put it up on the board. It's just further explains the vesting item, and I think in working with the town attorney, we would recommend that we use the language that's actually in the body of the staff report for the expiration condition, and my sincerest apologies that we didn't catch this
Can
one.
you give us a page? Oh, here it is,
Yes,
right here.
page 4 of the staff report dated March 12th, and it's in the middle of the page under vesting, and then it's also in the box. Thank you.
So I understand your proposal, what you're doing is you're suggesting to the maker of the motion that that paragraph that's now in a box that says expiration that's up on the overhead would be substituted for the paragraph that's now contained in the template, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'll give everybody a chance to review it. And then look to Councilman Leonardis and see whether or not you want to incorporate that language that's now up on the board into your motion.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. The town code referenced 29.20-335. Could you expunge on that for us?
Yes, that code section specifically talks about when something vests, and that vest has to be as substantial as distinguished from a tentative or token manner. And so what we came to is that we wanted to be able to define that specifically in the code section, and because even that code section is a little vague by what is substantial as distinguished from a tentative or token manner. And so we did that by the last sentence by saying, for this conditional use permit, substantial shall mean any increase in a student enrollment above 315. So as I said before, the minute they go to 316, all conditions of this permit would vest and they'd have to comply with them.
All right, thank you.
All right, so Councilman Leonardis, what is your pleasure with respect to the expiration paragraph?
I will adopt the new language in the motion.
All right, Councilman Rennie?
Yes.
Okay, anything else? Before I call the question, Councilwoman Sayoc.
To the maker of the motion as well as the seconder, if we can simplify under use, it says the approved use is a junior kindergarten through 8th grade educational institution / private school. If we can simplify that just to say private school.
Okay, Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor. I was comfortable with the language as written, but I'm open to other ideas on that.
As the maker of the motion, you can certainly retain it the way it is, and then Councilwoman Sayoc can decide what to do.
All right, I will retain it the way it is for now.
Okay, so we have that language and the second from Councilman Rennie. Okay, so I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, Councilman Leonardis.
All right, thank you, Mayor Jensen. So the next paragraph is labeled hours, and it begins with students may be on campus Monday through Friday. And I was looking at 7:30 for students until 6 p.m. And this is from mid-August to mid-June. Looking at the school faculty paragraph, and it says school faculty may be on campus Monday through Friday. And on that, I'm looking at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., mid-August through mid-June. And then the grounds and facilities would be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., mid-August through mid-June. School management, maximum of 5 management staff may stay on the campus after 6 p.m. up until 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, mid-August through mid-June. Looking at the extended hours, up to 10 times per academic year, hours may extend past 6 p.m. up to 9 p.m. And then all vehicles must be off the campus by 9:30. Regarding the weekend presence on the campus by the faculty, management staff, and/or maintenance, limit that from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturday and no Sundays. And this is for the period mid-August through June. And then regarding other, no more than 5 non-management school employees can be on the campus outside of the hours of operation.
Okay. So taking that section as an independent motion, is there a second for Councilman Leonardis' proposals? Councilman Rennie.
I have a question first. So you're limiting Saturdays from 9 to 1, I think it was. Later on, we may be talking about sports events on Saturday. Would that include stuffing those in before 1, or would those be exclusions?
The sporting events will be excluded.
I'll second the motion then.
Okay. Vice Mayor Spector?
Thank you. I may not be supporting this motion in its totality, but again, through the mayor, it would be helpful for me if staff could go through each component as they heard it, so that I can be sure that I'm not going to support it. And I should tell you where my major concern is. But I would like to hear what the motion is. My major concern lies with the definition and limitation of school faculty and management on the campus. So I want to give that some thought.
Actually, if I may ask the maker of the motion to repeat A and B, then I would be in a better position to respond on the whole motion.
Through the mayor. On A, students may be on campus Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. And this is for mid-August through mid-June. So not addressing summer school specifically, just the academic school year. And then B, school faculty may be on campus Monday through Friday. And that was 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And the grounds and facilities maintenance may be on campus Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. This is during the academic school year, Monday through Friday, mid-August through mid-June.
Ms. Pravetti?
Okay, thank you. So the condition for hours is A, students may be on campus Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., mid-August through mid-June. B, school faculty may be on campus Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., mid-August through mid-June. Ground and facilities maintenance may be on campus Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., mid-August through mid-June. C, school management staff may stay. A maximum of 5 school management staff may stay on campus after 6 p.m. up to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, mid-August through mid-June. D, extended hours. Up to 10 times per year, hours may be exceeded past 6 p.m. up to 9:30 p.m. School management staff and maintenance do not count towards the number per year for extended hours. Weekend presence on campus by faculty, management staff, and/or maintenance is limited to 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturday only, no Sundays. The time of year is mid-August through mid-June. Other, item F, no more than 5 non-management school employees can be on campus outside of these hours of operation.
Vice Mayor, does that clarify your issues?
It clarifies the motion. Thank you.
Okay. So I have we have a motion and a second. I just have a comment on the motion. I'm not sure where I am yet. My issue is that there are a lot of things that are broken out that I don't feel need to be broken out. So, for example, B, school faculty may be on campus Monday through Friday from 7 to 7. Grounds and facilities maintenance may be on campus Monday through Friday, 7 to 7. I don't understand why we need to have that separately categorized, nor do I understand why we need F, which we could just include under a staff, a B kind of staff people sort of thing. Same with C, staff management. So I'm looking to make it less complicated, if possible, if that makes any sense. So, but I understand that we have a motion on the table. But we'll see where we go with that motion. Other comments or questions on the motion? Councilwoman Sayoc.
Okay, I think I'm going to say the word simplify again. I will not be supporting the motion. I do agree with A as well as D. I understand that the hours that we're trying to limit are the school students and their families, but I do have concerns with getting into details of school faculty when they arrive, how many. I feel that that doesn't necessarily contribute to the larger problems we're trying to address, and just feel it's overtly complicated. So for that reason, I won't be supporting it.
Councilman Leonardis, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jensen. I was just going by the way the template was laid out, so I'm looking forward to perhaps simplifying this and consolidating it. I'm open-minded to that.
Okay, Councilman Rennie.
So I guess this is a question for Councilwoman Sack. So your suggestion would be just to remove the faculty line and not have a restriction on faculty?
Let's actually, before Councilwoman Sayak answers the question, we have a motion on the floor and we have a second. So instead of us discussing that, if Councilman Leonardis wants to change that motion, or if Councilwoman Sayak wants to make a motion to amend it, or Councilman Rennie or whoever else, you're more than welcome to do so. And then Councilman Leonardis, you can determine whether or not how you want to proceed. But Councilwoman Sayak, do you have a motion to amend the current motion that's on the floor with respect to the hours section?
Sure. I move to amend under hours, keeping A, students and their families may be on campus Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 6, Monday through Friday during the academic calendar year. Striking B, C, and F, and keeping D, extended hours up to 10 times per year. Hours may be extended past 6 p.m. up to 9:30, I believe is what was suggested. The school management staff and maintenance do not count towards the 10 times per year for extended hours. So.
Okay, so that is now an independent motion to
Oh, okay.
amend Councilman Leonardis. Is there a second or comments? Vice Mayor Spector.
Yes, I'm going to second that.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Spector. Do we need any questions or discussion on that specific topic? Councilman Rennie.
I'll just say that I like it and I'll support it.
Okay, so I'm going to call the question. All in favor of that amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Now, Councilman Leonardis, given that your motion has been amended, as indicated by the motion we just did, do you want to go forward with your hours section and the times, et cetera, that you had contained in your original motion?
No, we will go with the amendment.
Okay, and Councilman Rennie?
Yes, we'll go with the amended.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to adopt the hours section as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. All right, Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. Moving on to after-school activities. Paragraph that says programs, including but not limited to dance, Lego, engineering, woodworking, Spanish, and drama for the school students are permitted up to, and I have 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, August through June.
All right. Before I call for a second, I'm going to propose something to the maker of the motion. When I look at this paragraph and I see dance, Lego, engineering, woodworking, Spanish called out, I wonder if 20 years from now we're going to care about dance, Lego, woodworking, and Spanish. So what I might propose to Councilman Leonardis is something to the effect of enrichment programs, including but not limited to arts, mechanics, engineering, and language, are permitted, et cetera, et cetera. Would you be willing to incorporate something like that?
Yes, I'm glad you brought up that point because I think you are absolutely right. You don't want to name specific things like Legos.
Okay, so with that, because Legos may be extinct 20 years from now. So with that amendment, I will second your motion. So we have a motion and a second. Comments or questions? Councilman Rennie.
Just like to comment, this is one that I had originally written down as maybe we don't need it. We could simplify if we don't have it. I'm not sure what we're achieving with this one, so that's just a suggestion.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor and a second with respect to that paragraph. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. Moving on to after-school sports and competitions. Again, the paragraph reads, any sports, competitive or not, and other competitions with at least one participating team from this approved school are permitted up to, and then a time, and I put 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and that's from mid-August through mid-June. And it says these competitions are permitted a maximum 3 days per week and up to 2 per week outdoor. 2 of those 3 days can be outdoors.
Okay. Is there a second with respect to that paragraph?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilman Rennie. I actually have a comment or a question, but I may end up supporting the motion, but it bothered me that this paragraph was limiting sports to those that occurred outdoors, but then there's another thing about volleyball and basketball, but there could be other sports that happen indoors. I don't know, chess match, gymnastics, whatever it might be. So I don't understand why we are necessarily separating them, but that said, just something to consider. Other comments or questions on the motion? Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it pertains to teams that will come and visit the school and have a competition. Now, there is, later on in the template, something that addresses the volleyball and the other sports and the tournaments and things, but I think this is pertaining to kind of team sports where you have a team visit the school, and how many days a week that would be.
Thank you for the explanation. Any other questions or comments on that motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. Next.
Moving on to the paragraph that says after-school care. Child care for the school students is permitted up to 6 p.m. is what I propose Monday through Friday. And this is for the normal school year, mid-August through mid-June.
Okay, questions or comments or a second? Vice Mayor Spector. Seconded. Questions, comments on that paragraph, motion? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Councilman Leonardis.
Moving on to the volleyball and basketball tournaments. And this states, a tournament is a series of contest matches, games between 2 or more schools or teams, one of which must be the approved school. And the times would be from 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Vehicles off campus by 4 p.m. on Saturdays. And then these tournaments may occur up to 2 Saturdays per academic year.
Okay. Second, comments or questions on the motion? I have a question which may be for either Councilman Leonardis or for staff. So staff, if you can answer this. These tournaments may occur up to, Councilman Leonardis is proposing 2 Saturdays per year. I'm wondering how many tournaments does Hillbrook normally have, and proposing this as a question and a suggestion to the maker of the motion, why wouldn't we tie this condition to a ongoing posted calendar of events versus limiting them to 2 Saturdays? Because tournaments often go over several days. And for the record, Ms. Savage, good evening.
Good evening, sorry. The template was addressed to reflect the town council's discussion and comments from the public. The town council can certainly choose to remove that limitation.
Okay, Councilman Leonardis, you can choose to ignore that, or you can maintain your motion or change it.
I have a question for Ms. Savage. So being that there is the 10 special event days. Are the volleyball and basketball tournaments intended to be outside of the scope of those 10 special event days?
Are you referring to the special event days in the hours or the exception days discussed through traffic?
The exception days discussed through the traffic.
Those would need to be determined by council.
Thank you.
Okay. So Councilwoman Sayak has a question.
A question to the maker of the motion. Again, in terms of simplifying, could we just strike this and just let it fall under the 10 exception days and let the applicant determine when they would like to use the 10 rather than calling it out?
Through the mayor, thank you. I would say yes. The only, I think, situation which may arise from this is the fact that it's a tournament and the fact that it is on a Saturday and it would go to potentially a maximum time of 3:30 p.m. as opposed to something like a 9 p.m. I think that would be the biggest concern with the consolidation.
Okay, so right now we have a motion but not a second. Vice Mayor Spector.
With that explanation, I'm going to second the motion.
And there it is. Councilman Rennie.
So I'm a little concerned we're confusing things. So the 10 exception days were meant to be days during the week when you already have a bunch of traffic, and they were planning to do evening events, back to school night, I don't know, accepted candidates night, things like that. So they were meant to be traffic exception days. On the weekend, we don't have that much traffic. So I think we're confusing things. And then the negative of this might be that, Hillbrook decides not to use them for back to school nights, but instead has 10 tournament Saturdays. And I think there's some request by the Longmeadow neighbors to have, quiet during a certain, most of the weekend. So the idea would be to have a few tournaments, but not allow it get out of control. So I'm worried that our motion is not perfectly worded.
Okay, so I'm hearing that as a comment on the motion. And it's my understanding, Councilman Leonardis, that you are intending to address exception days or traffic counts later on as we get to that in the template, correct?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, so this is simply for the volleyball, basketball tournament paragraph with your motion and the second, correct?
Yes.
And that is also the understanding of the seconder?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so other questions or comments on this before I call the question? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And it passes 4-1, opposed by Councilman Rennie. Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor. So moving on to the evening and nighttime events. Evening and nighttime events are events that occur between 6 and 9 p.m. Evening and nighttime events are permitted up to 10 times per academic year from mid-August to mid-June. These events must be listed by August 1st on a publicly accessible online school calendar.
Okay, I have a question, just so I understand the motion before I call for a second. And on evening and weekend events, this is intended to be an exception to the hours, not the traffic, correct?
The way I understood this was that there would be 10 exception days a year, and I think the traffic is addressed later on.
Right, so your motion addresses simply extending hours, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Questions or a second? Vice Mayor Spector.
Thank you again. With that explanation that we're not increasing the traffic, I will second the motion.
Okay, questions or comments on this motion then? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Carry
Sorry
on.
about that. Moving on to the open house.
And if there are paragraphs that are smaller, you could
Combine?
maybe try
More than one?
two of them at once.
Okay.
You could step out.
We'll try that now, since we have a couple small ones coming up. Open house. one weekend open house per calendar year from 7:30 to 3:30 p.m. The vehicles should come off campus by 4 p.m., and this is for Saturday and excluding Sunday. I was also going to exclude this from the special events or the traffic day of 10, just this one event. I'll go into the delivery hours. Delivery shall occur between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday through Friday.
Thank you. So I have a question regarding open house. You say you're excluding it from the number, from the traffic. So are you then keeping the second sentence of the open house, or are you changing that in some manner in your motion?
So one weekend open house, so it's a Saturday, it's going to be from 7 to 3:30, and it will be excluded from the 10 special event traffic days. So I would look at this as a special in itself traffic day, and I would put a maximum traffic cap on that of 960.
Well, okay. So I have a question then about that. Since we haven't reached the traffic yet, I would ask you to consider, as the maker of the motion, whether to put a specific number on an open house, or to simply create a condition with respect to an open house and then get to the traffic later, or do you want to actually include a traffic number exclusively toward the open house?
I will remove that number from the open house. I think your suggestion is well taken.
So can I ask you to restate your motion then before I call for questions, comments, or a second?
Yes. So one weekend, we'll have an open house from 7:30 to 3:30 and have the vehicles off campus by 4 p.m. This is on Saturday. This will be during the normal mid-August through mid-September. And then I moved on to the delivery hours, which shall occur between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday through Friday.
Okay, comments, question, or a second? Councilman Rennie.
I'll second it.
Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Councilman Leonardis.
We'll move on to summer session. I think I'll take just this one paragraph. A summer program is permitted between mid-June and mid-August for 6 contiguous weeks. Summer hours are limited to, I would say, 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m., Monday through Friday.
Okay, questions or comments, or second? Vice Mayor Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A comment, had I made the motion, I would have done 12:30, but I'm okay with 1, so I'll second the motion.
Other comments or questions? Councilman Rennie.
Yeah, so I want to actually bring up the larger picture on the summer. We're going to get to enrollment at some point, but I guess what you need to think about is whether we're going to allow the breakthrough Silicon Valley to occur, because that's an extra 100 students, and it runs from, I think, 9 to 4:30. So if you cut it off at 1, that may not enable the breakthrough Silicon Valley. So just a reminder of what that is Hillbrook, on their own dime, takes kids in from low-income families to try to educate them so they can make it through a 4-year school. So this is their way to give back to the community. The kids come in on buses, so there shouldn't be much traffic impact, and they're inside all day. So, being from somebody who's been on many nonprofit boards and service club, I think that giving back to the community is something we should enable. So I would suggest that maybe we want to have till 4:30 on summertime.
Okay, so that is a comment from Councilman Rennie, and I'm sorry, I've lost track. Councilman Leonardis, you made the motion. Did we get a second? Seconded by the Vice Mayor. Any other comments or questions on the motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes 4-1. Councilman Rennie opposed.
So moving on to the next paragraph, which is professional development and conferences. Training for the parents of enrolled students and the school's faculty only is permitted from 7:30 to 6 p.m. unless designated as a nighttime exception, Monday through Friday, mid-August through mid-June. No other conferences shall be permitted.
Comments, questions, or a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilman Rennie. Comments or questions? Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor. Moving on to third-party use. And I was going to go back in time to what I think was intended in 2001 when the CUP was drafted, and that is that the summer use of the campus was supposed to be for students who are enrolled in Hillbrook. And I was going to say third-party uses are not allowed other than when they are used, for instance, a special instructor is brought in to teach only Hillbrook students or Hillbrook parents. So that would be my motion. No third-party use with the exception of enrolled Hillbrook students that would be enrolled from mid-August through mid-June, with the exception that the instructor would be a teacher who is hired by Hillbrook that is not currently on Hillbrook staff to teach the Hillbrook students.
Comments, questions, or second? Vice Mayor Spector.
Madam Mayor, if the maker of the motion or staff could repeat the motion, I think I got it, and I think it'll be a second, but I just need to hear it one more time.
Councilman Leonardis.
We'll have staff if
Ms.
I'd like to
Pravetti.
defer to staff.
I'll give it a try, but please feel free to correct me if I don't get it right. Third-party use is not allowed with the exception of enrolled Hillbrook students or by a teacher hired by Hillbrook but not currently on staff.
Councilman Leonardis, does that reflect your motion?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Spector.
And just for clarification, then the third-party use would be the teacher who is not a normal teacher, and I'm going to put that out there as a question, but I'm going to go ahead and second the motion.
Other comments or questions on the motion? Okay, my comment on the motion is that I'm actually not going to support it because I think that what happens at the school is not as so important as how people come and go in getting to the school and the traffic, so I will not support this motion. Other comments or questions on the motion? Councilwoman Sayak.
Actually, I'm also not going to support it. And this is just a philosophical thing moving forward. One of the things that I'm hopeful moving forward is that some members of the larger Los Gatos community might be allowed to start using or summer program, for example, as a way to better understand Hillbrook. And if we put this in there as is, it probably would not be allowed.
Other comments or questions on the motion? So I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. All right, so it fails, 3-2. I'm going to look to, actually, I'm going to put Councilwoman Sayak on the spot since of your comment and see if you want to try for a motion on that paragraph.
Okay, so third-party use. Third-party use is allowed. A third-party use is defined as an entity that is under a contractual partnership agreement with the school. Payments for participation in the activity are paid directly to the school. And again, the premise of this is that it is Hillbrook's summer program, and my concept is that it would not be limited to just Hillbrook students, that Hillbrook be allowed to open their summer campus to those they feel would benefit, as long as it met the maximum number of students and maximum number of traffic that we will discuss further.
Councilwoman Sayak, you actually just answered my question. I'm wondering if, before I would consider seconding, but I would want to have a specific provision in this paragraph that indicated that any such third-party use was specifically subject to the traffic demand management plan and the traffic counts that would be contained elsewhere in the document.
Correct, correct. And again, the stress is that this would be and you know what, before, if I may, I want to ask legal counsel, the way the language currently is, if you understand where I'm going with that, it's a Hillbrook program, not something they would rent out to another summer program, correct? That's the way it's currently written?
The way it's currently written, they could enter into a contractual relationship, but Hillbrook's still going to be the party that's going to control the operations, control the money, and be a more of a partnership as we sought to make certain that the conditions are met. But you could certainly add the mayor's suggestion is making sure that any third-party contract has to comply with all the conditions, just not the traffic, but all the conditions of the use permit.
And ultimate responsibility would fall on Hillbrook, correct? Okay.
So
Yes.
Councilwoman Sayak, are you going to incorporate that
Yes, I
suggested
will.
language?
Thank
With,
you.
with that, I will second the motion. Vice Mayor Spector.
For clarification, this third-party use, I just want to confirm that if it were in the summer, it is going to conform with the summer session hours that we previously adopted.
Correct.
All right, with all of that, I will support the motion.
Other comments or questions on the motion? Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor. Although we haven't addressed the number of students yet and the number of summer traffic numbers, I'm not comfortable moving forward with supporting this motion because of those two things. I feel that those need to be addressed first. So will not be supporting the motion.
Okay. Other comments or questions on the motion? I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Passes 4-1. Councilman Leonardis opposed. Councilman Leonardis.
So the next paragraph, additional activities, I would leave that unchanged.
See if there's a second or questions. I actually have a question, and this may be for Mr. Schultz. My concern with this language is that with the 2001 CUP, there's been lots of discussion about if there is an item that is specifically included in the CUP, that is allowed, and if it is not specifically included, it is not allowed. But things can be interrelated, things can be, so if, for example, the CUP said Spanish and they taught Mandarin, Mandarin wouldn't be allowed. So what I'm concerned about is what's the actual interpretation of this language if this motion goes forward?
We're trying to eliminate those discussions that happened in the past by putting this language in. So if it isn't expressly stated for a use, then it's not going to be allowed. So that's why it's very important that we look at the language carefully to make certain all the uses that have been put in are all that are going to be allowed.
So, for example, we have to make sure that we say language class, not Spanish, because then suddenly we wouldn't have a language class, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, with that understanding, I would be prepared to second the motion. Other comments or questions? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Councilman Leonardis.
So moving on to the paragraph that says maximum number of students. And I propose the maximum number of students enrolled during the academic year should be limited to 350. And this is predicated on the fact that the applicant demonstrates compliance with all the conditions in the conditional use permit for 1 year and shall begin in the academic year August of 2016 through June of 2017.
And would you conclude there with your paragraph or go on with the other language that's contained in the template?
Thank you. I thought I would just pause and take a breath.
Okay. So I'm going to ask Ms. Pravetti if you could summarize. I'm not sure if I, for one, understood exactly what was being proposed. So if you have a summary.
The number of students, the maximum number of enrolled students shall be limited to 315, beginning in August 2016. 350, thank you. Beginning in August of 2016 through academic year ending June 2017. This provides a 1-year compliance opportunity.
Is that correct, Councilman Leonardis?
Yes.
Okay. Vice Mayor Spector.
As I understand the motion, I wouldn't be able to support it, but maybe I don't understand it, because I understand the 315 students currently. I understand adding more students, i.e. 33, if the conditional use permit were complied with, and then adding in 2016-17. But it seems to me there's more that needs to be addressed. So I'm not going to second it yet. I'm going to listen to all the other discussion before I decide whether I want to second it, whether I want to support it. It just seems somewhat incomplete to me.
So Councilman Rennie, if I can, I'm going to ask Councilman Leonardis to just go ahead and finish everything that you contemplated. We'll try to take good notes and we'll summarize it later, and that may either answer questions or raise more questions.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a maximum proposal, so 350 students maximum. And the maximum enrolled students would be limited to 150 during the summer session. The school shall post the total enrollment on their publicly accessible website. The total enrollment the enrollment numbers provided in the affidavit submitted to the California Board of Education, except that summer session numbers shall be posted on a publicly accessible website, even if not required by the California Board of Education.
Okay. So Councilman Rennie.
So my thoughts on this is the increase is far less than Hillbrook is asking for, and I'm also thinking we should try to be limiting based on the traffic count that we give. I think if we choose I suspect we will choose a traffic count that's not going to allow them to get to the 414 they're asking for, but that we effectively leave that up to them to manage. So I still like the 33 per year for 3 years idea, but then look closer at where we put the traffic counts.
Okay, I hear that as a comment. We don't have a second on this motion yet. So Vice Mayor Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a comment too. I would anticipate the CUP allowing for additional students folded in over time, i.e. 3 years at the soonest, because it would also require, I would anticipate, compliance with traffic counts. So I would just, as it stands now, I'm not going to be able to support the motion. And I know it doesn't have a second.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Councilwoman Sayak.
For me, the students tie so heavily with the traffic, and that I know that's next. I'm wondering if we can almost skip this until we get to the traffic discussion to see how they can relate to one another.
Okay, so I actually think that's a very good idea. I'm going to take you up on it because my thoughts with respect to the number of students were along the lines of the Vice Mayor, with an incremental increase depending upon compliance with the CUP. So, Councilman Leonardis, why don't I ask you to skip ahead to the maximum / average / other number of daily vehicle trips. We'll tackle that, and then we'll come back to the enrollment numbers, if that's okay with you.
That is okay. Thank you, Mayor. So the maximum number of daily vehicle trips, the total number of vehicle trips entering and exiting the campus mid-August through mid-June shall not exceed 840 pursuant to the following. Evaluation shall include all days. The school may designate 10 days per year from mid-August to mid-June to remove the maximum calculation consistent with this conditional use permit. These days must be identified on a publicly accessible online calendar by August 1st.
Okay, so before I ask for any comments and questions, I'm going to see if there's a second. The proposal was for a maximum cap of 840 daily trips, correct?
Yes.
Is there a second? Okay, that motion is going to fail for lack of a second. Did you want to try another motion, or I can ask another council person to make a motion on that issue?
Please ask another council member
Right.
their thoughts.
Thoughts or a motion, Vice Mayor Spector?
Thank you. I'm going to make a motion that the maximum be 880. And rather than get into the, well, I'll go ahead. 880 maximum with 10 exceptions per year. Those exceptions not to increase the maximum to anything beyond 960.
Okay, let me do the same process and see if there's a second with respect to that motion. Okay, I will second that and then open it for comments or questions on that motion, which is an 880 daily vehicle cap. Questions or comments? Councilman Rennie.
So the 880 is not going to allow for us to add many vehicles or many students because there's not much room. We're almost at 880 max now. If you look at the data, the max data after taking out exception days is an 860. So you can't add a whole lot of students unless we fly them in somehow. So I think that, you know, an 880 max is pretty much limiting us to no extra students. If I suspect if I were Hillbrook, I wouldn't accept that CUP, and we'd be back to where we are now.
Okay, other comments or questions on the motion? Vice Mayor Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to step back a little bit because, as you've heard, we've had a lot of discussions with members of the communities representing all kinds of interests. Everybody, even if they are in the same neighborhood, they have different ways of looking at things. And so this council has read thousands of pages. It has met with individuals for years, if not decades. And if you talk to any one person, you say, well, how are you going to vote? You know, you've got all this information and it conflicts. How are you going to make up your decision? And what we do is we weigh everything and then we balance it and we come out with our decision. We don't look at any one thing. When I look at the numbers, I don't say that because a motion is for 880, it doesn't mean that the Hillbrook won't be able to expand. I see numbers that are fantastic over the past 6 months that would certainly give an opportunity for expansion, and that number could even increase if the mechanisms of getting the children to school were improved even more so. So I don't see this as a door closing. I see it as an opportunity, and that's why I made the motion I made.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. As the seconder of the motion, I echo what the Vice Mayor has said. We have gotten lots of numbers. I very much appreciate the efforts that Hillbrook has gone through with their traffic demand management plan to get to where they are. I appreciate that they gave us the data from June to February, which shows results that are even better than anyone had told us about. I'm confident that the parents at Hillbrook can maintain their excellent support of the school by sticking with that traffic demand management plan that's given them such success. My original motion was for 880. The data that we got from Hillbrook convinced me that that was not unreasonable, so that's why I am seconding the motion. Other comments and questions? Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. And originally I thought that 880 may be a reasonable number, but then when we received the traffic data from Hillbrook, it appears that 840 may be an attainable number. And the reason why I chose 840 is because meeting with the different neighborhood groups, I feel like as the number gets higher, there's pressure to find another alternative entrance, or there's the neighborhood or the neighbors in the immediate vicinity are not comfortable with the higher number. And I know it's just a number, but this is a number that I think the 840 that I proposed can be lived with, and I think that number could be lived with by adding the 35 students that I proposed earlier. So I thought well about that. So I don't know where we're going to end up on the students. Obviously, the higher the number, the more students can be allowed. But I have a whole different dialogue on the number of students, so I'll just leave it at that. That's why I chose the 840. I don't want there to be pressure to how can I say this? I think I'm trying to get through this tonight, so we'll see how we do.
Other comments or questions on the motion? Which, Vice Mayor Spector, would you do me a favor and repeat your motion and remind me whether or not you've included the 10 exception days?
Madam Mayor, yes, the 10 exception days were included. I also stated that with the exceptions, the maximum should not exceed 960, and then I had a maximum of 880.
And in looking at the template, as the seconder, subparagraph C and D, does your motion address those items?
It does not, because I did my own version of the template. I didn't go through each of the subparagraphs and words on the template verbatim.
Okay, so your motion is the language that you've stated, not the language that we have up on the board or in front of us, correct? Okay.
Yes.
So I will continue in my second. Other comments or questions on the motion? Councilman Rennie.
So are those number of exceptions per semester?
I'll just get, actually, Ms. Prevetti, you want to just summarize the motion for us?
Certainly. So the maximum number of daily vehicle trips is 880. Pursuant to the following, the school may designate 10 days per year that can be removed from the maximum calculation. However, those days cannot exceed 960. The days must be identified on a publicly accessible online calendar by August 1st.
And Vice Mayor, does that reflect your motion?
That's exactly what I said. Yes.
Just want to make sure. Okay. Any other questions, comments on the motion? I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, so that motion passes 3-2. Councilman Rennie and Councilman Leonardis opposed. So Councilman Leonardis, do you want to then go back to the number of students paragraph, given that motion that's just been passed?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jensen. So back to the paragraph with the number of students, the maximum number of enrolled students during the academic year shall be limited to 350 for the year 2016-2017. The applicant may apply for an increase of 35 students after it has demonstrated compliance with all the conditions in the conditional use permit for 1 year. No enrollment increases occur before August of 2016. The maximum number of students for the summer session shall be limited to 150. The school shall post total enrollment on their publicly accessible website. The total enrollment shall the enrollment numbers provided in the affidavit submitted to the California Board of Education, except the summer session numbers shall be posted on a publicly accessible website, even if not required by the California Board of Education.
Okay, so let's see if there's a second for that motion. It's going to fail for lack of a second, so I'm going to invite other council people to make an alternative motion if they have one.
Mayor.
Councilman Leonardis.
So the reason why I proposed 35 students is because it gives everybody something. It gives Hillbrook $1 million more a year in revenue. It gives Hillbrook 35 students. When I look at the history of the compliance over the last, 10 years or something in our packet, the maximum students that were there were 338 students, and that was exceeding the CUP allowment. So I figured there's some room to grow there. With the traffic, we're trying to work within the parameters of traffic. I mean, that is what's upsetting the neighbors. There's also the issue of taking some baby steps and reestablishing some trust. And quite frankly, there's a big difference, in my opinion, between a school that has 350 students and a school that has 415 students. I think when you get to that school level of over 400 students, it creates a lot of other issues. One being noise for the surrounding neighbors, one being the inevitable amount of traffic, trips by parents or whatever that will happen. So, and then it's the traffic in the surrounding neighborhoods, it's the bus stops, it's everything else. So that's why I proposed the 35 students. I didn't hear a case from really the Hillbrook parents or the Hillbrook administration of why they have to have 100 students. I heard a lot of campaigning, but I didn't hear any proof. And quite frankly, the town isn't collecting any money on this. We're not getting any business license fees. We're not getting any traffic impact fees. All we're doing is adding traffic to a neighborhood. And there's several sets of neighbors involved with different issues. And the problem with that is it puts pressure on other neighborhoods to perhaps take on a burden of the traffic that they're not experiencing now. And I just think, why not try with the 35 students, see if it works, and then down the road, once we see these systems in place, if it works, we'll try for more or whatever through the process of a CUP modification then. So that's why I threw out the motion of 35 students and 150 during the summer session.
Thank you, Councilman Leonardis. But we're still looking for a motion with respect to number of students.
So with that explanation, I could go back and
You could try again.
try again.
I suspect you'd get the same result, but you could try again.
you
If
never
you want
know.
to, you can. Would you like to convert? Would you like to try again?
Sure, I'll do it.
All right, so let's see if there's a second.
Okay. So the maximum number of students will be 350 during the academic year 2016 and 17, beginning in August of 2016. And the school has to demonstrate compliance with the conditional use permit in order to earn this. And the maximum number of students for the summer session shall be 150.
Okay, is there a second?
I have a question.
Councilwoman Sack.
Perhaps another, if I may, another way to look at it. I believe the last time we met, we had talked about the phasing in 3 years, so 33 each year, with the planning commission being the deciding body of whether or not an additional tranche of students could be awarded. And so that in some ways provides the baby steps rather than opening a CUP each time with.
So Councilwoman Sack, I hear that as not a second. So I hear that as potentially an alternative motion.
Correct.
So, am I correct that you're not seconding Mr.
Correct.
Leonardis' motion? Is anyone else seconding Mr. Leonardis' motion? Councilwoman Sayak, would you like to convert your comment into a motion?
Okay. Let's see, I move for number of students, the maximum number of enrolled students shall be limited to 33 in year 20, no more than 33 in year 2016 to 2017, no more than 33 in year 2017 to 2018, and no more than 33 in year 2018 to 2019 in each year thereafter. And then I would put language that says that this is dependent upon compliance of the existing CUP.
Okay, I'm going to look for a second before we start discussion. Vice Mayor Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is not a second, but as it stands now, I would not be able to second it because it references the current CUP, and so that is confusing. I was looking at a potential for an addition of 99 students over 3 academic years if the applicant complied with the traffic mandates of the CUP.
So Councilwoman Sayak, either you could withdraw your motion, incorporate the suggestions of the Vice Mayor, or, because we don't have a second yet.
Right. I'd be willing to incorporate the Vice Mayor's suggestions.
And let me just make sure, perhaps from Ms. Pravetti, what you now understand the state of the motion, the state of the nation is.
Okay, the motion would essentially allow the increase of 99 additional students in a staged manner, no more than 33 in academic year 2016, 2017, no more than 33 in academic year 17, 18, no more than 33 in 18, 19, and each year thereafter. And this,
With the total of 99.
With the total, thank you. With total of 99, thank you.
I think the question that needs to be addressed is you've told them 33, 33, and 33, and what would happen if it was 33, 20, and 21? Are you then done in 3 years, or do you have a carryover, something for you?
So, Councilwoman Sayek, could I suggest that we just simply actually put in the total number? So on the template where it says the maximum number of enrolled students shall be, can we just say 414? And then would that address, Mr. Schultz, your issue, and then talk about incremental increases, but established a plus 99 maximum?
My suggestion for that would be the maximum number of enrolled students shall be limited to 348 in year 2016, 2017, 381 in year 2017, 2018, and 414 in 2018 and 2019, for a maximum of 414. If in any given year, if the maximum of 33 isn't reached, it can be carried over.
Okay. Councilwoman Sayek, do you understand the comments from Mr. Schultz?
I do, and if I may just ask a clarifying question on that. But the question of whether or not, what happens if they do not come into compliance for, let's say they are unable to meet the traffic maximum.
So that's actually in your next paragraph that you would go into, which is your initial review for you to look at. And we've separated that paragraph out to see how you want that to be done, prior to, and we can work on that language prior to the addition of any students listed in paragraph, whatever the number of students. It has to go to the Planning Commission for review of this school's compliance with the maximum average trip. So that paragraph might be able to be worked on a little bit, but it ties in.
Does that make sense to you, Councilwoman Sayek? Looking at the paragraph that's titled Initial Review?
Yes.
Not even be initial review, maybe it's a yearly review.
Right, I'm just making sure that we're looking all at the same thing.
I think I'm going to withdraw my motion just because what I'm concerned about is the issue that has been discussed many times throughout this course of the hearing, vested rights. And if it's stated in here that 33 would be awarded in 2016, 2017, is that now then something that is an expectation that we're taking away? I understand the initial review and the language there, but that's what concerns me.
All right, so Councilwoman Sayek has withdrawn her motion. I know that the Vice Mayor had a suggestion to her. Do you want to try a motion on this issue?
Actually, I thought I had, but who knows?
Go for it again.
Yes, I'm going to move that the Hillbrook get a maximum enrollment of 99 students over the life of their conditional use permit, with a maximum addition of 33 in school year 16-17, another 33 in school year 17-18, another 33 in school year 18-19, but that those additional students, the right to add those additional students, will be contingent upon the school's compliance with the traffic count mandates.
I'm prepared to second that motion, but I was confused when you said the maximum number of enrolled students shall be 99. So I'm assuming that that's 99 additional.
That is correct.
Okay, so I'll second the motion. All right, comments or Mr. Schultz?
The contingent, who will make that determination? Did you want that to go to planning, back to city council, or did you want staff?
Vice Mayor.
The compliance was, for me, a separate motion, and I haven't gotten to that yet. But should I have gotten to it, I would have had I would have distinguished between an initial review and a subsequent review. The initial review would have been done, my motion would have had the initial review done by the council, and then subsequent reviews done by the Planning Commission. But that is not part of this motion.
Okay, as the seconder of the motion, could I ask the maker of the motion to consider consolidating the paragraph now at the top of page 3 with the number of students paragraph to make that review clear, or you know, I don't know that it makes sense to separate it out, given Councilwoman Sayak's comments regarding vesting, etc. But you can certainly reject that idea.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I could, but I don't see a reason to at this point. I think the initial review component of this potential CUP has its own intricacies. And given the fact that these counts are currently contingent upon an initial review, I don't believe that it needs to be one motion. However, if I need to combine the motions to get a second, I am prepared to do that.
Now, I will continue with my second. I have one other question. In the template, with respect to the number of students, there is a provision regarding summer, which I didn't hear addressed in your motion. Was that intentional?
It is intentional. I think that, in my mind and in my potential motions, the summer count was a separate issue.
Okay. Given that explanation, I'll continue with the second. Questions or comments? Councilman Rennie.
So I guess I need to comment. I'm kind of in a quandary. I'm not sure how to vote on this because from what I can see in the data, we can't add any students based on the car count we gave them. If you look at the Nelson Nygaard that says they can add 4 students. If we had added an additional 5 exclusions for semester, for example, we could have got to Councilman Leonardis's 350 students. So what I think is going to happen is I guess thinking about it a little bit further, I think the Vice Mayor believes that they can do some more magic with their TDM plan, but currently they're bringing 120 students on in the morning in 3 bus trips and 180 with 60 cars in carpools and about 6 more that aren't carpooling. So for about 69 trips, they're bringing 315 kids onto campus. I don't know how they're going to do much better. It's a little bit worse in the afternoon because there's more carpool, less bus. But to me, if I'm the head of school, I'm looking at this as a huge risk accepting this CUP because he's going to be in trouble. He's going to have to keep his parents motivated, doing what they're doing just to keep from getting fines at his current level of kids. And I don't see how the parents are going to stay motivated. They've worked their butts off to get it to this level, and we basically slapped them in the face. So, to me, I feel like this is going to end up being a lose-lose. The neighbors may think they got low traffic, but what's going to happen is it's going to blow up, and all of the TDM, that voluntary TDM, is going to fall apart. So I'm really having trouble whether I should vote for more student increase or not because it's kind of hypocritical. Thanks.
Okay, that's a comment. Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. With respect to Mr. Rennie's comments, that's why I tried to pick a number that I felt was realistic, that was attainable at 350. It gives us an opportunity to take a step forward, a baby step forward, and see what happens, as opposed to saying, well, we're just going to add 99. We're only going to put this limit of, at this point, it's 880 maximum out there. I was trying to pick a number that we can all live with moving forward, based on what I heard from the neighborhoods and the many neighbors surrounding the property with their issues. So I'm still not comfortable moving forward with 99 students. I really feel like, my kids went to Van Meter School, and when the school was in the low 300s, it was a community school. When the school got to be around 600, it was harder to know everybody's name and get into the school, and the amount of traffic trips and everything else was a lot more. I think there's a tipping point when you go from 300 to 400 with a school. And remember, this is tucked away in a neighborhood. It's not on a main thoroughfare. So as Mr. Rennie said, I don't think there's any, you could keep mitigating, and I applaud the parents of Hillbrook and the staff, or the management of Hillbrook for their traffic programs and what they've achieved. But I think adding that many students is going to not make this plan work.
Other comments or questions regarding the motion? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? No? Oh, sorry. I missed your hand.
I was just going to respond to Councilman Leonardis. I'm not opposed to some smaller number of students, but it needs to be fit with what I think is a realistic amount of cars so they can actually achieve it. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to actually call the question now. So we have a motion on the table, and hopefully we remember it. So all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
And I didn't hear Councilwoman Sayak. You said aye, okay. So that motion passes 4-1. Now, Councilman Leonardis, you were doing so great. I can go back to you.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. I would be delighted. So I think we're on the paragraph that says the maximum number of enrolled students shall be limited to during the summer session. And my number I was going to select was 150 for that.
And that's your motion?
That is my motion.
Okay, let's see if there's a second before we go on. Vice Mayor Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not prepared to second yet. I was looking to tie the number of students, i.e. 100, to a maximum number of trips, 275. And so, given the fact that this motion does not have a maximum number of trips and has more students than I was anticipating, I won't be able to second at this juncture.
Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. I will expand on the motion. Skip a couple paragraphs ahead to the traffic limit in the summer. I was going to limit that to 300 trips. So 150 students and 300 trips.
Okay, so we have a motion that includes a maximum 150 students and a maximum of 350 vehicle trips per day, I'm assuming.
300 vehicle
300,
trips.
sorry. Is there a second? Councilwoman Sayak.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions regarding the motion? Councilman Rennie.
I think I'm going to not support the motion because I'm in favor of the Breakthrough Silicon Valley program that I mentioned before and Hillbrook's ability to give back to the community. I think that they need 100 kids to make that work, in addition to the 100 normal enrolled kids that would be doing the summer school. So I think that number should be more in the 200 range and, appropriate number of car trips for that.
Okay, that's a comment on the motion. And I'm struggling with whether to support the motion because I was of a mind to tie the number of students in the summer to half the enrollment at any given time, and then adjust the traffic to half. So that was what I was looking for. So I'm honestly not sure where I am on this motion. Other comments or questions on the motion? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. So that motion passes 3-2. Councilman Rennie and Mayor Jensen opposed. Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor. So moving on to the paragraph that says initial review, I will suggest an initial review of 6 months from the date of the approval. The Planning Commission shall review the school's compliance with this approval. The Planning Commission may consider whether there is merit to increase the number of students from 315 based on compliance with all conditions in this permit. This review shall be completed at the applicant's expense.
Okay, let's see if there's a second. Vice Mayor Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I may have noted this before, but I believe that the initial review for compliance should be done by the town council, and then after subsequent reviews, subsequent to 2016-17, shall be done by the Planning Commission. But I won't be supporting the motion because I think initially this council should make the review.
Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. I will amend the motion to reflect the Vice Mayor's suggestion.
Vice Mayor.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I have a comment question for the maker of the motion. My issue with the motion is that it does not contemplate continuing annual review. I would want there to be a built-in review process. The way it is now is there is an initial review, so I would actually change that paragraph to just review, and then say initial review 6 months by the town council, and then have annual review thereafter by the Planning Commission, and then include the Planning Commission may consider whether to increase it, et cetera, et cetera. Is there any interest in incorporating that language, Councilman Leonardis?
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. That seems like a reasonable suggestion, so yes.
Vice Mayor is the seconder. Will you retain your second?
I'd have to. There is another. There is a component.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
There is a component of this proposal or this outline that looks to ongoing compliance review, which is where I was going to add the terms of the Planning Commission's review process. So that's why I had the initial review limited to the pre-2016-17 and to the council.
And thank you, Vice Mayor. I am now seeing that, so I will withdraw that request. Councilman Rennie. You had your hand up, I thought. No, you did not. Questions, comments on the motion now? Ms. Pavetti.
Mayor, thank you. The way the motion is stated is that Hillbrook would need to comply with all conditions of this permit within that first 6 months. And I just think we might need some legal advice as to the advisability of that, since that would be before this permit vests. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Spector.
Thank you. My thought for the initial review was that the town council would review the applicant's compliance with maximum number of vehicle trips. I don't actually know the terminology that Mr. Leonardis used, but that was what I had anticipated the motion would entail.
Councilman Leonardis. And I'm assuming, Vice Mayor, that your comments about ongoing review would potentially contain a review of other items aside from the traffic compliance, correct?
I am, quite frankly, not prepared to address ongoing review and its components within this motion, which is much more limited.
All right. So, Councilman Leonardis, your motion indicated all compliance with all conditions. The seconder is indicating that she understood maximum traffic trips. Does that change your motion?
My motion would be to address all compliance.
Before I ask the Vice Mayor for a second, Mr. Schultz, is there some concern with that?
That becomes very difficult from a standpoint of the 6-month initial review. The way staff looked at it is the main concern was with the traffic counts and making sure they met that requirement. If you're putting all the maintenance requirements, weekend requirements and everything else on that, that would take from the date this is finalized immediately for them to begin to comply with that without even knowing whether they'd be able to meet their traffic in the next 6 months when you have your initial review. So from a problematic standpoint, I would imagine the applicant wouldn't be able to begin with the compliance immediately if there's already events scheduled or other things in the next 6 months. And that's why we limited it only to the traffic in that first initial review.
Okay, thank you. Just to follow up to your comment, the council could incorporate a full review if it wanted to in the ongoing review portion of the CUP, correct?
Absolutely. Once they initiate, invest, and increase their students, then absolutely the annual review would include all of those conditions.
Okay. Councilman Leonardis, does that change your motion, or do you want to stay with your motion?
I am satisfied with the explanation by the town attorney, so we will make it initially for the traffic, and then subsequent, we'll be addressing it, I guess, down on the ongoing compliance review paragraph, the other areas.
Okay. Vice Mayor Spector, you're going to continue in your second?
I'm continuing on my second on the basis that this was an initial review and that we are only looking at the maximum number of vehicle trips condition. With that understanding, I will second it.
Okay. Questions or comments on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, we have already addressed the traffic trips. Now we're down to mandatory traffic demand management plan. Councilman Leonardis.
So I'm looking at that paragraph and would just add one word. Let's see. School must inform persons and entities covered by the plan. Picking up and drop-offs are prohibited on public streets in the immediate vicinity of the school. I'm hesitant to name each street individually because there would be streets like Kennedy Road and Vista Del Monte that are affected by this. So just trying to, I guess, come up with some language. The school must inform persons and entities covered by the plan that pickup and drop-offs are prohibited on public streets. I wouldn't say in the immediate vicinity. I would just say on all public streets. I don't know if that's too broad.
Mr. Schultz? That's tad broad, I think. Councilman
In that
Leonard.
case, we'll narrow it down. I'll try to think of some more streets. Again, I'm not trying to make this inconvenient. I'm trying to make this safe for the public and not make it so it causes other issues for the neighborhoods. So Robin Way, Hilo, Lower Marchmont, Topping, Cardinal, Stony Brook, Upper Marchmont, I would say Kennedy Road, Vista Del Monte. Those are two others that I recall hearing about. So I'll incorporate those in my motion.
Okay, let's see if there's a second.
I don't see how the school would have any chance.
Are you seconding?
No way.
Okay, so wait to see if there's a second first. Is there a second? Okay, that's going to fail for lack of a second. Invite other council people to try an alternate motion, if you have one, with respect to this. Okay, so I will try one. The mandatory traffic demand management plan, I would move to incorporate the language that's contained in the template. However, the school shall implement, and this is my little pet peeve throughout the document, at its expense, not their expense. Just my little educational point. I would maintain the language which I think is actually questionable, but I know it's been done in the past, and I think it's contained in the 2001 CUP for pickups and drop-offs in the immediate vicinity. And by that, I mean, I don't know, quarter mile, I mean, 500 feet. I mean, the immediate vicinity of the gate of the school. So I'm happy with that immediate vicinity of the school. I would not start naming streets, because if I started naming Kennedy, I couldn't drop somebody off over by Shannon on Kennedy, which nobody would drop their kid off over there for Hillbrook. I would maintain that language, so that would be my motion with respect to the traffic demand management plan. And I'll look to see if there's a second on that. Councilman Rennie.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilman Rennie. Discussion or questions on the motion? Vice Mayor Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question on the motion. Somewhere in the middle of the proposed language, it states submitted by the school and approved by the town. The approval by the town is of question to me, whether we really want that in the condition and whether we really want to do it. So that would be something I would like, hopefully we'll explore before we call the question.
Okay. So I will check this with the seconder. Actually, when I was reviewing this, I had that same question. So I would be happy to delete the phrase "and approved by the town," because I would imagine, just contemplating going forward, that plan may change in subsequent reviews. Something maybe get better, something we may find doesn't work, something does work. So if we are involving the town in approving that every time, I think that we run into issues. So if I would propose to change my motion to delete the phrase "and approved by the town" and look to the seconder to see whether that's acceptable.
That's acceptable.
Okay, so we have a motion with respect to the traffic demand management plan. Questions or comments? Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. And I'm going to go back to Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor. Moving on to the traffic count monitoring paragraph. At the applicant's expense, an electronic underground counter shall be installed at the Hillbrook Gate that transmits to a third-party vehicle counts for both entering and exiting traffic. The school shall monitor its compliance using the embedded counters and by installing tube counters as a backup. The data from the counters will be used to determine whether the school has complied with traffic requirements. I'm okay with all that language. I think that installing the one for the entrance is crucial to maintain the counts and the backup as well.
Okay, I have a question for you before I ask for seconds. When you say install two backup counters, are you talking about embedded sensors?
So the way I understand it now, there's an embedded sensor at the exit gate only. So I think there should be an embedded sensor at the entrance gate and then a backup cable, a tube counter, just in case the entrance or exit counter fails, in the event the enter or exit counters fail.
Okay, let's see if there is a second for that motion. I do not see one. Does anyone have an alternative motion, or Councilman Leonardis, do you want to amend your motion? Okay, once again, I'm going to make an alternate motion. And my motion is going to include traffic count monitoring bus stops, parking, and pickup and drop-off area. So I am fine with the language that is currently on the template. The school shall monitor its compliance using the existing embedded counter and by installing tube counters as a backup. Data from the counters will be used to determine whether the school has complied with the traffic requirements. I did look at the suggested additions on the staff report on page 2. I am okay with the section 2 for ongoing data traffic validation, which I would include in my motion. I do not want to include the bullet 2 on page 2, which is the random check, I think, for 1 day each semester. I would make that 3 days each semester. And with respect, so that's with respect to traffic count and monitoring. The bus stop paragraph on the template, I would move to include as is. The parking paragraph, I would move to include as is. And the pickup and drop-off area, I would move to include as is. So that's my motion. I'll look for any second. Councilwoman Seah.
I'll second the motion.
The motion is seconded. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. On your motion, on the section called pickup and drop-off area, it references must be maintained with 5 lanes. This is a CUP that's going to last, for 100 years, and that doesn't make any sense to me today, much less the future.
Okay. That language comes from I think the existing CUP. And given your comment, I'm happy to amend that to a pickup and drop-off area shall be maintained in front of or on school grounds. So I'm going to look to the seconder and see whether or not the seconder is okay with that amendment.
Yes, so that's fine.
Okay. So other comments or questions on the motion? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. Regarding the emergency access road, I do not support changing the language that exists in the current CUP. So my motion would be to leave that alone. That was another reason why I was not supporting the increased enrollment above 350.
Just so I understand your motion, then your motion would be emergency access road, the emergency access road to Ann Arbor Drive shall not be opened up at any time, et cetera, et cetera?
Only for the emergency access as stated in the current CUP.
Okay, let's see if there's a second. Vice Mayor Spector?
I'll second the motion.
Comments and questions on the motion? Councilman Rennie?
I was just going to second it. No comment.
Other comments or questions on the motion? So if I understand the motion is to maintain the language as it currently exists under the 2001 CUP, is that correct?
Yes.
And call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Okay.
So the paragraph, curfew and noise.
Yes, sir.
So the only change I have to that paragraph is that there was a letter we received from the Longmeadow neighbors that said it may exceed the town code 1 time per academic year. Other than that, it's subject to the town noise limitations. So I will go with the language as drafted. On one occasion, they may exceed the town code.
Vice Mayor Spector.
The motion is a little unclear to me. I also got that, we all got that letter. And as I would see the exception for noise to be 1 amplified DJ event per academic, but not summer school year. So that's how I would phrase the exception. And so at this juncture, I'm not ready to second the motion.
Councilman Leonardis.
I will amend the motion to reflect the Vice Mayor's comments.
Vice Mayor.
Second.
Comments or questions on the motion? Councilman Rennie.
So I'm a little concerned because it's going to be difficult to measure the amount of noise. The letter that I got way back when from the Longmeadow neighbors that are most affected by it are really looking for times when there's no noise at all and less worried about what's the noise level, because that's really difficult to measure. It seems to me that we really want to talk about amplified events and rather than talking about exceeding the town code, because that's going to be hard to measure.
Okay, I hear that as a comment on the motion. Questions or other comments on the motion? Councilman Leonardis.
Might want to consider amending the motion to, if the event goes beyond 6 p.m., that it would be included within the 10 allowed nighttime events during the academic year. But of course, I need the seconder to agree.
Okay, let me again look to, I hope, Ms. Pravetti to summarize the current state of the motion.
The current motion says curfew and noise. The school shall comply with the town code for curfew and noise issues, except that amplified noise may exceed noise limitations for a maximum of 1 time per academic year, consisting of 1 amplified DJ event per academic year. It could probably be more concise.
Yeah, probably could, but Councilman Leonardis, I heard you say something about if it went beyond a certain time, it was...
So adding to Ms. Pravetti's sentence, and if the event was scheduled to go beyond 6 p.m. with the amplified music, that would become one of the special events, one of the 10 special events that are allowed during the academic year.
Okay, my question for you, Councilman Leonardis, is the 10 special events for exceeding the hours, or the events for exceeding the traffic, or both?
I think it was the events exceeding the hours.
Okay. So I think we had a second. Do we still?
No, you don't.
All right.
In which case, I will go back to the original motion.
Can you tell us what that is?
Sure.
It's
Ms.
a quiz.
Pravetti.
So we're back to essentially allowing 1 amplified DJ event per academic year that may exceed the noise limitations of the town.
Yes.
Okay. Now, do we have a second on that motion?
Yes.
Okay. Comments or questions on the current motion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Ongoing compliance review. Councilman Leonardis, if you don't mind, can I make a motion on this one?
Please.
My motion would be with respect to the paragraph in the template that it read, upon completion of the 6-month review required above, if the Planning Commission finds that the school is in compliance with this conditional use permit, a yearly compliance review shall, or whatever, wait a minute, it's wrong. Upon completion of the 6-month review required above, the Planning Commission shall review the school's compliance with this conditional use permit annually. If at any review, the Planning Commission finds that school is in violation of that conditional use permit, or that new or more effective data collection methods are available to compute traffic counts, then the conditional use permit may be modified and or revoked in compliance with the town code. Or compliance review shall be completed at the applicant's expense. That's my motion with respect to that paragraph. So I'll look and see if there's a second first, or comments or questions.
Can we have
Seeing
it
no
read
second?
back, please?
Sure, sorry. Upon completion of the 6-month review required above, initial review required above, the Planning Commission shall conduct an annual review to determine whether Hillbrook is in compliance with the conditional use permit. If at any review the Planning Commission finds that the school is in violation of the conditional use permit, or that new or more effective traffic data collection methods are available, then the conditional use permit may be modified and or revoked as allowed under the town code. compliance review shall be completed at the applicant's expense. That's the motion. Is there a second?
I'll
Okay.
second.
It's just going to say it failed. It's seconded by Councilman Leonardis. Questions or comments on the motion? Vice Mayor.
I'm having a problem with the motion because of its breadth. I do understand that the town has an ordinance which allows us to examine, review CUPs, but the terms of the motion are just so broad that I just don't know if I can support it in its current form, the motion.
Okay, other comments or questions on the motion? Councilman Rennie.
I also am concerned about how broad it is, but I'm also concerned about using the term CUP. You know, when in the initial review we talked about traffic. My concern is if you just say violation of the CUP, a lot of that is can get into gray areas. So, for example, we say kids must be off campus by 6 o'clock. What if a parent's caught in traffic and picks their kid up at 6:10? Have they violated their CUP? You know, there's a lot of places like this that I feel like you could get into a lot of trouble trying to figure out whether it's violated or not. So why not stick to the traffic, which is what we really care about?
My response to that comment, and for the Vice Mayor as well, and I'll call for other comments or questions, is that the Town Council and the Planning Commission, and I have been at this for a while now on the Planning Commission, takes a long time and gathers a lot of input and a lot of information to craft conditional use permits that contain conditions that allow different uses to operate in the town, hopefully not to the detriment of others. And if we were going to simply look at one aspect of that CUP, we could have gone home a long time ago. But we are crafting conditions to hopefully address all the impacts that a particular use could have. Hence my motion to include a review of whether or not those other conditions that we spent a whole lot of time putting into place have been complied with. My perspective is that's not unreasonable. It's allowed by the town code. It's something that the town has done before. Given the history of this project and the history of the school and the history of the CUP that's been in place, having a structured way to conduct a review, to me, is very important. It allows people to come in. I assume good behavior. I'm very naive in that respect, but I assume good behavior. I don't assume that people are going to be at their windows counting. I assume that the school is going to do its best to comply with the conditions. The school has indicated that it can do that. I'm confident going forward that it can do that. So I don't think that a review is onerous. I think it's a good thing, and it can be a good thing and facilitate an ongoing discussion. Hence the breadth of my motion. So that's my speech on that one. Vice Mayor Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If we could have either you or staff read back your motion. Thank you.
Ms. Pravetti.
Sure. Ongoing compliance review. Upon completion of the initial review as required above, the Planning Commission shall conduct an annual review of compliance with this permit. If at any review the Planning Commission finds the school is in violation or that new or more effective data collection methods are available, then the conditional use permit may be modified and or revoked as allowed under the town code. Compliance review shall be completed at the applicant's expense.
That is correct. So we have that motion. Councilman Leonardis, are you maintaining your second?
Yes.
Comments or questions on the motion before I call the question? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. And again, I didn't hear Councilwoman say aye. Aye. Okay, so that motion passes 3-2. Vice Mayor Spector and Councilman Rennie opposed. Councilman Leonardis.
So now we get into the penalties section. And really, for me, it comes down to what the maximum daily trip cap should be and what should be paid, and then the maximum, the escalation of the penalties. And I've struggled with these numbers because obviously it could get quite substantial, but the intention is for the penalties to be taken seriously. If the penalties are too light, they can be exceeded and paid for, and it wouldn't make a difference, perhaps, to the institution. So I want to try to protect the neighbors with this. With that said, we go to paragraph A. I'd recommend $1,000 per day and $100 per excess trip. Moving on to paragraph B, I would recommend $2,500 per day and $200 per excess trip. And then moving on to paragraph C, I would recommend a maximum of $5,000 per day and $500 per excess trip, and leave all the other language the same. And the part about reducing the potential to reduce enrollment, I'm not sure if that's already been taken care of with the way we have adopted the language for the increases in enrollment or not. So I'll look for input on that.
Is there a second? Councilwoman Sayak?
I have a question. I guess I'll wait till you get a second before I make a comment, actually.
Okay, let's see if there's a second. We do. Vice Mayor Spector.
I'm probably going to do it. Councilmember Sayak was. If I can have the maker of the motion read back, because a lot of it was just generically referencing the document we have before us, and it would be helpful for me if we had the words of the motion.
Yes, I will be glad to do that. So I move that if the traffic consultant's review of the trip cap monitoring reports reveals that the number of trips exceeds the maximum daily trip cap, the applicant shall pay a penalty of $1,000 per day the cap is violated and $100 per excess trip. If the town's traffic consultant's review of the trip cap monitoring reports reveals that the number of trips exceeds the maximum daily trip count for a second consecutive month in that academic year, the applicant shall pay a penalty of $2,500 per day the cap is violated and $250 per excess trip. If the town's traffic consultant's review of the trip cap monitoring reports reveals that the number of trips exceeds the maximum daily trip count for the third month in that academic year, the applicant shall pay a penalty of $5,000 per day the cap is violated and $500 per excess trip. And then that's where I left it.
Okay, let's see if there's a second. All right, that motion is going to fail for lack of a second. Do I see an alternate motion? Vice Mayor Spector?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You don't see an alternate motion yet, but I didn't have too many problems with the numbers that the maker of the motion had, or the fact that he tiered it into 3 phases, which is consistent with our proposed document here. But what I was looking for and hoping for was that at some point, maybe it's the third violation, we have a reduction in enrollment, i.e. reduce enrollment by 1 student, and I would see that as happening at the end of a school year, and I would anticipate it would not take a student out, but would be account for somebody who was graduating. But that's the devil in the detail. That's something I would like this council to explore, which is a reduction in enrollment.
So Councilman Leonardis, that comment, does that change your motion? And I'm looking, Vice Mayor and Councilman Leonardis, at the template in subparagraph C, which actually includes, and the following academic year's maximum enrollment increase shall be reduced by X. And I don't know if that's something that addresses the Vice Mayor's concern, or if Councilman Leonardis, you want to include that or not.
I'm willing to include that. I'm not certain which number would be reasonable.
Okay. So I guess, if Vice Mayor, if you're thinking about making a second, given that, did you want to suggest a number to the maker of the motion?
The number would be 1.
Councilman Leonardis?
I think that would be a reasonable amount. So
now do we have a second?
If we have a motion, I'll have a second.
I think that, well, Councilman Leonardis, or Ms. Perbetti, let's have you give it a try.
Okay, penalties for exceedances of maximum daily trip cap. A, if the town's traffic consultant's review of the trip cap monitoring report reveals that the number of trips exceeds the maximum daily trip cap, the applicant shall pay a penalty of $1,000 per day and $100 per excess trip. B, if the traffic consultant's review of the trip cap monitoring report reveals that the number of trips exceeds the maximum daily trip cap for a second consecutive monitoring period in that academic year, the applicant shall pay a penalty of $2,500 per day and $250 per excess trip. If the town's traffic consultant's review of the trip cap monitoring report reveals that the number of trips exceeds the maximum daily trip cap for a third consecutive monitoring period, the applicant shall pay a penalty of $5,000 a day that the cap is violated and $500 per excess trip. And the following academic year's maximum enrollment increase shall be reduced by 1 student.
Is that correct, Councilman Leonardis?
Yes, but I've been thinking as Ms. Pervetti was reading the motion back that perhaps the number 1 student would be too few, considering it would be kind of at a point of egregious violations 3 months in a row, and they were fined the maximum fine. So I'm just wondering if 1 student would be enough of a deterrent in this case or not. So
it's your motion.
Maybe we can make that 5 students.
Okay, seconder?
I'm not prepared to go there.
Yeah, okay. So we have a motion, we have no second. And so I'm going to look to the council for alternate motions. Councilwoman Sayak.
I'll go ahead and try an alternate motion. I'll keep the monetary amounts that Councilmember Leonardis put forward. For the first month, $1,100, second month, $2,500, $250, third month, $5,500. I will not include a decrease in enrollment. And actually, I will include a grace period of 6 months during this initial review, so that as the school is examining whether they can meet this, they will not be fined monetarily.
Okay, Councilwoman Sayak, I would be prepared to second that. I'm wondering, no one has addressed what's being suggested to us in subparagraph D for where the monies would go. Are you going to include any of that in your motion?
Well, let me, question of staff, if I may. Penalty money, where does penalty money go? Does it just go into the general fund, or is it designated up front in?
Typically, it does go into the general fund.
Okay, then I would amend, penalty money shall be paid to the town and used towards neighborhood traffic pedestrian improvements as determined by the town's community development director and town engineer.
Okay, I would be prepared to second that if it was as approved by the town's Parks and Public Works Director, because I think that that makes more sense for traffic improvements and pedestrian improvements than the Community Development Director does.
Okay, I would agree with that. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I'll second your motion. Vice Mayor Spector.
This raises a question that I've had. There's going to be, assuming that this CUP is ultimately approved, there's going to be a significant amount of town interface with it. And it's every once in a while in these conditions, it states that the applicant shall, be responsible for costs. But overall, there's not that kind of a requirement. So given the fact that this CUP could have more town involvement than probably any one that I've seen, is there any suggestion by either the council or the staff as to how we or they would be addressing this additional cost?
Let's look to the staff, actually.
Well, with all of the extra compliance reviews, there is staff time that is required in order to analyze the data and prepare it. And we are a cost recovery operation in terms of those types of compliance reviews. So it is reasonable, if it's the will of the council, for those to be at the applicant's expense. I'm not sure if you're suggesting that the penalty money could go towards paying for a compliance review.
Is that the question?
It is not.
Okay.
Separate questions.
Other questions or comments on the motion as it stands now? Councilman Rennie.
I guess I'll make a comment. My thought was to have a CUP with traffic counts that were attainable, that allowed some number of increased students, and to have substantial penalties to make sure you stayed within that. Since I don't think that we have traffic count that is obtainable for any increase in students and even a risk with the current level of students, I'm having trouble with whether I should vote for pretty strict penalties, because I think it'll be a nail in the coffin, raising the risk of whether, Hillbrook should even get involved in this, or preferring to have very little so that they do take the risk and try to go with the CUP. So those are my thoughts on it.
Other comments or questions on the motion? Ms. Perfetti.
Thank you. I just wanted to have a clarification. As I was hearing the motion, I wanted to make sure I understood that the monitoring reports, I guess I assumed that we would be doing monthly monitoring of the traffic, so it would be the first month would be the first set of penalties. If in the second consecutive month, it would be then the second set. But the monitoring period, as we've discussed in other sections of this permit, might be a full year if we're talking about the compliance review. And I don't think it was the intention of the maker of the motion to assume a 3-year out of compliance. So I think we just want to make sure we have clarity and that our assumptions are accurate. So some kind of clarification on what is the monitoring period for this.
I was envisioning monthly.
Okay, and as the seconder, I will maintain my second. Other comments or questions? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, it passes 3-2. Vice Mayor Spector and Councilman Rennie opposed. Councilman Leonardis.
Okay, so moving on to the next couple paragraphs. Should be neighborhood coordination, neighborhood committee, gymnasium doors and windows, noise barrier, square footage, building footprints, town indemnity. The only one that I have any concern with in all those paragraphs is because of the Long Meadow neighbors. I have to refer back to the letter they wrote. Was essentially the noise barrier paragraph, and it doesn't seem like there's support for a noise barrier from the neighbors on Long Meadow. So in addition, the Long Meadow neighbors wanted the outdoor grounds maintenance to be Monday through Friday, year-round, and not on Saturdays. So with all those paragraphs, leave the language as it is, but make a motion that there would be no noise barrier at 183 and 185 Long Meadow, and that the grounds maintenance would be done Monday through Friday and not on Saturdays.
Okay, so Councilman Leonardis, just so I make sure I understand, your motion is deleting the noise barrier paragraph. I had thought that the maintenance was included earlier on so that we don't need to independently address that. Mr. Schultz is nodding at me.
Okay. It's been a long evening, so thank you.
Okay. So Councilman Leonardis' motion incorporates basically the balance of the template CUP. So first I'm going to look for a second and see where we get on that. Councilman Rennie.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a second. Comments. Vice Mayor Spector.
The concern I have about this motion, and I have the same issue with the template, was it has a whole number of neighborhood coordination requirements and neighborhood committee requirements, and it establishes the school as the entity that would be organizing these neighborhood committees and so forth. And I don't think that's necessary. I don't believe the school should have to do this. I do think the school should have all the information online that it has and it will have in the future. But I don't believe I'm going to be supporting the motion, not because I think neighborhood coordination and neighborhood committees are bad things, but because I don't think they're necessary in this context.
Okay, I actually agree with the Vice Mayor in that when I had looked at the template, I had crossed out neighborhood committee. I'd crossed out subparagraph C under neighborhood coordination, and I'd crossed out. So I think that I'm going to again assume, wrongly, rightly, I'm not sure. I'm going to assume good conduct going forward, and I'm going to assume that the communication that's been established can actually continue without having it mandated into a CUP. I'm concerned about naming roads. I'm concerned about what the composition of a committee might be, because given how many differing interest groups we've had on this, picking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 may get us into trouble, and those constituencies and those factions could change. So the only thing that I would be willing to mandate is that the school have a newsletter, or, actually, I don't even know about that. I just think we have I think somewhere in our conditions earlier, we had talked about the school posting its calendar and making its website accessible. I think that is plenty. I agree with eliminating the noise barrier paragraph because I understood that Long Meadow did not want that. So I could not support the motion as it's currently stated and seconded. Other comments or questions on the motion? Oh, Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. So for clarification, the paragraph that begins with neighborhood coordination and the paragraph that begins with neighborhood committee, you would just eliminate both of those from the CUP. You'd leave the paragraph that says gymnasium doors and windows, the paragraph that says noise barrier, the paragraph that says square footage, the paragraph that says building footprints, and the paragraph that says town indemnity.
Yes, but I would eliminate noise barrier. I think you said I would keep that.
I'm sorry, you want to eliminate the noise barrier?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I meant to articulate. I would be willing to amend the motion.
Okay, well, we have to see if the seconder agrees with that. Councilman Rennie.
So I'd actually like to see at least part of B in neighborhood coordination left in there. I think it's important for them to post on their website the schedule of events so the neighbors can be aware, maybe go skiing or something on the weekend when they know it's going to be busy traffic or something. I'm okay with removing the rest, but maybe we could leave some part of B in. Maybe we take out the mail, the schedule of events, but at least have it on the website.
So before I go back to Councilman Leonardis, Ms. Pravetti, I thought there was a portion of the CUP that we'd already discussed that was requiring the website to be posted and updated. Am I right or wrong about that?
I believe that was a holdover from our discussion in February. I don't think we've.
It's not
only
included?
talked a little bit about posting a calendar. You may want to add back in that item B.
Okay. So Councilman Leonardis,
I will add item B.
okay, and Councilman Rennie.
It's good for me.
Okay. So do people now understand what the motion is? It's essentially to eliminate the neighborhood coordination except for item B under our template. Eliminate neighborhood committee, eliminate noise barrier, but maintain the other paragraphs. Councilman Leonard, is that correct?
Yes.
And so comments or questions on that motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of our template. Do we need a universal motion now to incorporate all of the previous motions into a CUP?
That's one option. Alternatively, given the complexity of this issue, staff could make sure that we adequately heard everything and bring back for your consent calendar on April 7th the final use permit, so that way you can make sure we've got everything put together.
I have a lot of trepidation about that, but Vice Mayor Spector?
Madam Mayor, I'm prepared. I understand that we've done the template and we've got the conditions of the CUP. However, we also have findings to make for the CUP. We have findings to make under CEQA. We have findings to make with regard to the Planning Commission. Those are contained on page 3 of a March 17th desk item that we have. And so if the mayor would like, I'm prepared to go through that.
Madam Vice Mayor, that would be great. And that is on the desk item for other members of the council that we received this afternoon. And it's under the traffic table if you're looking for it. So Vice Mayor Spector.
All right. I'm going to move under Section 292190 of the Town Code to find that the proposed use of the property is essential or desirable to the public convenience or welfare. The proposed use will not impair the integrity and character of the zone as conditioned. The proposed use would not be detrimental to public health, safety, or general welfare as conditioned. And the proposed use will meet the objectives of the general plan and town code. Shall I do all of them?
Yes, please.
That the final EIR has been prepared in accordance with the requirements of CEQA and the state CEQA guidelines. The final EIR was presented to the Town Council, which has reviewed and considered the information contained therein, and the final EIR reflects the independent judgment and analysis of the town. And lastly, under Town Code Section 2920-300, and before I do this part of my motion, I need to ask Mr. Schultz, under the current law as it relates to appeals from the Planning Commission, do one of these findings still have to be made?
Yes, you should still try to make those findings in this case.
And before
and
you...
they can be, but you're hearing it de novo with the new evidence that's been presented.
I can do it, so I just need to know if I can.
Well, hang on for just a second. Ms. Pravetti or someone, I had thought that Councilman Leonardis had already taken care of this part of the motion when we first started. Is that correct?
Yes, my notes indicate that he made a motion upholding the Planning Commission decision and denying all appeals, and that it was found that there was significant new information for the council to consider.
Well, that was the provision I was going to take anyway, so I'll just stop my motion where it was.
Great. So we have a motion from the Vice Mayor. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Leonardis. Comments or questions on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. It passes unanimously. And just so those members of the council who may have voted no on various aspects of the CUP, for our information, all of those no votes are going to be duly recorded in the minutes, correct? Even though there's a global motion to approve.
Yes, the record will show the individual votes.
Okay. So before I adjourn the meeting and thank everyone, I have to do something that I neglected to do, sorry. This afternoon, on the occasion of St. Patrick's Day, the town received from Philip Grant, the Consul General of Ireland to the Western United States, has given us a flag from our sister city, Listowel. There you go, Councilman Leonardis. It got to us too late for us to put it up, but thank you, Ireland. Thank you, Listowel, for our flag. We will enjoy it. Thank you, all of you who have remained. I know that you all didn't get what you want. I know that some of you will walk away disappointed. All of us on the council have told you that we expect that to be the result. So, but what we want to do is have this be a moment where we can now go forward from this. All of us are hoping that we have given you, everyone, an opportunity to put this controversy behind you, to put this controversy behind the town, and to do something positive so that we can recognize all of our neighborhoods are assets and all of our schools, public and private, are assets. So congratulations to all of you for all of the help that you've given us in getting through this process. I know that Hillbrook is disappointed, but I think that Hillbrook will be able to comply with these conditions. I sincerely hope that it will. It knows what its options are if it thinks that it can't. But I sincerely hope that everyone will give it a try. Thank you, members of the council. Thank you, staff, for all the work and time and effort that you've put into this and for all the help you've given us. So with that, good night. The meeting is adjourned.